Good evening, people. I hope I am audible for everyone. I hope it is time now, right? We still have 2 minutes left. Okay. So, yeah, the last topic that we have done was women issues, and we were discussing patriarchy vis-a-vis work. That is the topic that we were discussing. Within this, we have discussed the statistics. We have discussed the sectors, issues. One of the last issue that we were discussing was the unpaid work, which is largely done by females. Okay. So largely we have done this. I exactly don't remember whether we have discussed the questions or not with respect to work. As in, did we discuss that in the context of recent global gender gap report, discuss the factors responsible for decline in female participation in the labor market? I am not very sure whether I have discussed this question, as in I have given this question in the class or not. In case I have given, good enough. I'm assuming that you guys have tried that question. In case I haven't given, so this is one of the questions that in the backdrop of Global Gender Gap Report, recently published Global Gender Gap Report, discuss the factors responsible for decline in female labor force participation in India. It's a 10-marker question. In case I haven't given this question before, this is the question one can try to attempt. That in the backdrop of recent global gender gap report, discuss the factors responsible for decline in female labor force participation in India. Is that clear? Okay. Now, the last topic that we were discussing was basically the unpaid work. And I guess one of us, while concluding the class, the last point that we were supposed to discuss is that with respect to unpaid work, or in general, what is supposed to be done. So with respect to unpaid work, largely there are 2-3 reasons why women is overrepresented in unpaid work. That's more because she's not working in the official labor market. That can be one of the reasons. Second, there exists sexual division of labor, right, where it has already been stereotyped that the care work is largely the domain of the females in the family. Is that very clear? Okay. So there are certain factors because of which women is overrepresented. And then there also exists toxic masculinity, where men don't want to do the work which is traditionally considered as the domain of females. That is why the men themselves are not very enthusiastic about the paternity leave, because of the presence of toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is where men doesn't want to do the job which is traditionally considered as the domain of women. So because of these certain factors, there is overrepresentation or concentration of women in the unpaid work, whether it is related to household maintenances or it is related to care work. So in that context, the debate was whether we should monetize it or we should not monetize it. So with respect to monetization, there were certain challenges that we have already discussed. So then what is supposed to be done? So it was suggested that since women is largely concentrated in the care work. So obviously care work as in the child care facility and the care work for the elderly population. So in both the cases, the support for elderly care needs to be made. Similarly, investment has to be made so as to ensure qualitative child care facilities. तो ये दोनों तो उसके लिए हो गया. तीसरी चीज, that since men are not indulging themselves in the household chores, for example, on one hand you are providing the women maternity leave, but the concept of paternity leave is not there. So it is only women who is in the household to take care of the chores. So in that context, paid paternity leave concept needs to be introduced. Similarly, many a times women do not participate in the labor market because they don't have any incentive to work. We have already discussed, right? You being ridiculed, then there is, patriarchy at workplace, hostile work environment is there, then, the work incentives are not there. So in order to address that issue, suggestion can be given. For example, family-friendly work environment, or improve the work incentives or non-discriminatory practices to be promoted at workplace. Vis-a-vis pay, vis-a-vis career progression. This is nothing but wage gap and glass ceiling. So these are few of the suggestions which can be given. Is that clear? By the time unpaid work, whether it is getting monetized or not, that's secondary. At least make sure that these issues are addressed so that currently whatever burden the women is facing, she can be alleviated from that burden. Is that very clear for everyone out there? Is it making sense for everyone? Can I proceed? The next topic that we have to discuss is basically the violence against women. Okay? That's the next topic that we have to talk about. Is it visible for everyone? Team, थोड़ा सा brightness adjust कर दीजिए ना कैमरे की. Just adjust the brightness of the camera, the technical team, so that it is visible for the students out there. Okay, so violence against women. So what is the concept of violence against women? What is the extent of violence against women? How violence against women is extending from womb to tomb, right? So what is the concept of violence against women? So any act of gender-based violence which results into mental, physical, sexual harm is referred as violence against women. And this problem of violence against women is existing right before the birth of the girl child. For example, sex-selective abortion till the time of her old age, right? For example, abuse against widows, right? So the point which I'm trying to make here is the problem exists from womb to tomb. So whichever age group women belongs to, she is subjected to violence. Reason being, there exists a gender stereotype that women are passive, weak and dependent. Remember the first lecture on women, that there exists a stereotype that women is passive, dependent and weak, because of which the other party believes that it is easy to dominate women. It is easy to exercise your power on women, and that is why she is subjected to various forms of violence. So what is violence against women? Any act of gender-based violence which results into physical, sexual or mental harm is defined as violence against women. In fact, violence against women is the most crude manifestation of the patriarchal ideology. Is this clear? Now, if I talk about the statistics, see, no one is going to ask you the statistics, right? However, again, I will reiterate, this is not important from prelims point of view, but this is very important from your mains point of view, because then it gives you sufficient, fodder to substantiate your argument. For example, according to National Commission for Women, there has been 46% increase in the complaints of crime against women in the first 8 months of 2021. Is that clear? So basically, during this COVID pandemic, there has been a significant increase in violence against women. In fact, this has been termed as a shadow pandemic. It has been said that within this COVID pandemic, there is a shadow pandemic which is existing, and that is nothing but increased incidences of domestic violence against women. So that is with respect to domestic violence, the term shadow pandemic has been used. However, overall अगर हम बात करें तो in first 8 months of 2021, there has been 46% increase in the complaints of crime against women according to NCW. Highest recorded were with respect to right to life with dignity and domestic violence. Clear hai? There has been certain regional variations. UP has recorded maximum complaints followed by Delhi and Haryana. But more than that, I want to draw your attention to this fact that there have been, out of the total number of women who have been subjected to violence, 86% of the women did not seek any help. That means how many seeked help? Only 14%. So out of those 14% who have sought some sort of help, it was only 7% who could reach the appropriate authority. That is the plight or the irony in our society. We have so many laws. We have so many constitutional provisions, statutory convention, international conventions, schemes that have been launched so as to protect women against any kind of gender-based violence. Despite that, it is only 7% of the women who have the awareness and who have been able to access the appropriate authority. However, largely 86% of the women did not seek help. In fact, out of those 77% of the women did not even talk about that they have been subjected to any kind of violence to anyone. So can you see the fear? Can you see the stigma which is associated with violence against women, that women don't even talk about it? Is that very clear? Globally, 1/3 women have been subjected to some or the other form of violence. So whenever the question comes with respect to violence against women, this data can be used to substantiate your argument. 86% of the women did not seek help. 77% of the women, in fact, did not discuss it with anyone. Only 14% who sought help. Out of them also, only 7% could reach the appropriate authority. Is that very clear? Okay. Now my question, okay, in general, before we talk about the causes, let's discuss the provisions that are available to us. We have statutory laws, Domestic Violence Act, Dowry Prohibition Act, Criminal Law Amendment Act, Sexual Harassment Act. We have many acts in place, Immoral Trafficking Prohibition Act. So we have different acts in place to protect the women against any kind of violence. We have international conventions as well. For example, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. According to Article 5 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, no one shall be subjected to inhuman treatment. Then we have Vienna Declaration, which says equal status for women. Then we have CEDAW, Convention for Elimination of All Kind of Discrimination Against Women. And we have been signatory to all these declarations and conventions. Then you have UN World Conferences which have happened in past. One interesting fact about these conferences, the first United Nations Conference on Women happened in 1975 in Mexico. It was followed by Copenhagen, Nairobi, and finally 1995 in Beijing, when plan of action was laid down so as to ensure gender equality and women empowerment. In fact, 2020 made 25 years of Beijing Platform for Action was celebrated. Is that clear? There was a consultation between Ministry of Women and Child Development, National Commission for Women and UN Women, which happened, which talked about that whatever progress has happened in past 5 years, whatever challenges that we have confronted, what more needs to be done so as to achieve the goal of women empowerment and gender equality by 2030. So that was discussed. See, I'm generally making a reference about it. Okay? Just to give you an idea, but anyhow, let me discuss. So there were basically 4 conferences, in which this first conference which happened in Mexico, there is a fact about it. In this, there was a report. They basically asked every nation to publish a report towards equality report. This was basically being asked in order to assess the status of women in your respective countries. For example, status of women with respect to education, with respect to employment, ठीक है, with respect to participation in decision making, autonomy in decision making, with respect to awareness and practicing of reproductive rights. So there was a report, towards equality report, which was to be published by every member country of United Nations. That was decided in United Nations World Conference on Women. This was the first conference on a global platform which recognized the need to assess and to address the issues of women in the world. In fact, 75 to 85 was declared as UN Decade of Women. Is that very clear? Now, when this Towards Equality report got published, for the very first time, India realized that the status of women in context of Indian society is very dilapidated. With respect to all these parameters, the performance of women in our context is very poor. So that is why there was a sea change in the approach towards women empowerment, which was witnessed in context of India. So this 1975 is a crucial year. Prior to this, the policy followed was women in development. Post 1975, it became women and development. This was the concept given by Ronak Jahan. So prior to 1975, it was women in development, and post 1975, it was women and development. Here, women was treated as a passive recipient of the welfare policies of the government. So women were treated as a group of people for whom the government is preparing the policy, and they are mere passive recipient, beneficiary of those policies, right? That is women in development. However, there was a sea change in the approach which was adopted. Post 1975, the approach adopted came to be known as women and development. That is, women no longer would remain a passive recipient. Women would transform into an active participant in the governance process. So whichever issues related to women, women is actively going to participate. She is going to provide the leadership. She would be actively engaged in all layers or on levels of policy making. So whether it is policy making, policy implementation, evaluation, women would be an active participant rather than a passive beneficiary. Is this clear for everyone? So Ronak Jahan gave the concept that how we transformed from women in development to women and development. I'm generally giving you fodder that can be used wherever possible. So that is the thing about 1975 United Nations Conference in Mexico. Similarly, 1995 Beijing was equally important, because in that there were 12 areas of concern which were highlighted. You don't have to learn all 12 areas. I'm generally saying there are different areas of concern. For example, with respect women and poverty, women and health, women and education, women and decision making, women and human rights, girl child rights, women and environment. So all those concerns were highlighted. So this Beijing Platform for Action for Women Empowerment had completed 25 years in 2020, and there was a consultation which happened between Ministry of Women and Child Development, National Commission of Women, and UN Women to prepare further strategies so as to achieve the goal of gender equality and women empowerment by 2030. Is this clear for everyone? This is just for your reference. Okay? There is nothing to dictate here. I'm just discussing that how these references can be made so that you can remember. Then International Center for Research for Women had conducted various TV programs, for example, BOL, to create awareness among women about their rights, entitlements, about the discrimination that they have been subjected. Various initiatives are taken, for example, in context of Gujarat, concept of Nari Adalat, then in UP, Sahara Sangh, then West Bengal, Salishi, that is a traditional arbitration system. So these are nothing but the examples which can be given that so many efforts have been made in past and even in present to address the crisis of the crisis which are being faced by women. Similarly, there have been various schemes so as to address the problem of violence against women, whether it is Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Swadhar Greh, Ujjwala scheme, or Ujjwala, not that your cylinder wala scheme. There is another Ujjwala scheme that is with respect to the trafficking, right? So identification of the women who have been trafficked, prevention of trafficking, rescuing them, okay, then rehabilitating them, repatriating them if they belong to some other country. So there is another scheme for that. Then Mahila Police Volunteer, She Box, fast track courts. There have been various initiatives which have been taken. Then dedicatedly, you also have an agency which oversees whether all those safeguards which have been provided to women, all the rights of the women which have been guaranteed to them are being respected or not. That is National Commission for Women. Is that very clear? Okay. Now my question arises is, what are the causes for violence against women? Very quickly. Give me your answers. Give me your answers. I need some good points why violence against women is existing. And don't give me patriarchy per se. Give me some other points. Anything else? Any other point that you want to add? Lack of education. They are dependent. Or kuch. They are not aware about their rights. Fine, I'll take the point. Anything else? Not aware about their rights. Stereotyping. Employment नहीं है, independence नहीं है, economic dependence है, unemployment है. Fine. डिफरेंट प्रोसेस ऑफ सोशलाइजेशन है, ऑब्जेक्टिफिकेशन है, कमोडिफिकेशन है. एनीथिंग एल्स? Absolutely different process of socialization hai. So they have been conditioned like that. Institutional weaknesses hai. You don't have proper laws. Even if you have stringent laws, the laws are not properly implemented. There exists lack of gender sensitive attitude among the stakeholders. Stigmatization hai. People fear reporting the incidences of violence. Absolutely. Commodification of women. What are the causes of violence against women? First and foremost, patriarchy no longer is an ideology. There exists institutionalization of patriarchy. Fine, the points that you're writing is absolutely correct. I was looking for more comprehensive answers, but even then, whatever points you've written is absolutely fine. ठीक है? Absolutely, absolutely. That is because, Ashish, their socialization, stigmatization, fear always exists. Pressure from family. So yeah, look at the points. First and foremost, patriarchy no longer is an ideology, just an ideology in India. There has been institutionalization of patriarchy. What you mean by institutionalization basically is that every institution in India is driven by patriarchal mindset. For example, family, for example, education, for example, religion, for example, caste, for example, media, for example, your legislature, parliament, judiciary, everywhere in every institution, there exists a mindset which is driven by patriarchal values. So there is institutionalization of patriarchy. Is that clear? One thing. Second thing is the process of socialization has been very different for boys and girls. I've already told you, because there exist certain gender stereotypes, and gender stereotype has a manifestation at cultural level. Remember, individual level, cultural level, structural level. So cultural level ka manifestation yahi hai that there are different process of socialization. Different value set exist for boys and girls. So that is nothing but different process of socialization. Third thing is objectification and commodification of women by different agencies. To be very precise, by media, to be very specific. You are treating women as an object of sexual desire, and then she is being traded in the market as a commodity. So there is objectification and commodification. Then there exists a gender stereotype which says women is weak, passive and dependent. Then traditional and cultural practices also results into increased violence against women. For example, practice of child marriage. For example, practice of honor killing. For example, female genital mutilation, khatna. Okay. So basically, all these traditional and cultural practices have also aggravated or perpetuated the incidences of violence against women. Is that very clear for everyone? Then economic dependence of women is also one of the factor. Why in majority of the cases with respect to domestic violence, women do not report the cases. Why? Because they are economically dependent. They do not have any other alternative. And that is why they prefer to bear that incidences of violence. Is that clear? Okay. So you can write economic dependence of women. Bracket mein specifically domestic violence. Specifically, let us say, sexual harassment at workplace also, because you do not have the confidence that, in case from this particular workplace, you've been asked to resign or to remove, in case you report the case of sexual harassment, then your economic independence would be taken away. So all these factors also results into increased incidences of violence. Then internalization of patriarchal norms both by men and women. In fact, there is a index, Gender Social Norm Index, published by UNDP. Okay. So it was being surveyed, and 80 countries were surveyed by this UNDP, Gender Social Norm Index. It found 90% of men and women, I'm talking about both men and women, they have biased attitude against women. So there is internalization of patriarchy by both men and women. It's not only men who are practicing patriarchy. In fact, it is being perpetuated more by women. Is that clear? So 90% of the men and women across 80 countries have biased attitude against women, according to Gender Social Norm Index of UNDP. Is this very clear? Then situational factors. I'm giving you a very comprehensive answer. बहुत मेहनत से बना है. Please try to address this and try to focus here, because कहीं पे भी आपको एक जगह सारे points नहीं मिलेंगे. And women is favorite topic of UPSC. You will be getting questions. So situational factors, alcoholism, drug abuse, there is increased likelihood of violence in case of alcoholism and drug abuse. So these are situational factors. If a person is resorting to alcoholism or drug abuse, it's a situational factor, circumstantial factor, which further aggravates the possibility of violence against women. Because alcoholism, drug abuse, it reduces your ability to discriminate between right and wrong. It makes you delusional. So that is the problem. Then women with higher economic status, they also are at risk of violence. Why? Because their economic independence, their autonomy in decision making, their improvement in social status is a direct threat to the hegemony of the males in the society. So in fact, the educated women, economically independent women is equally vulnerable to violence as against the other counterparts. Is that very clear? Okay. Then in context of nuclear families, actually this point is very specific to domestic violence also. In context of nuclear family, there is lack of social support system. There is increased incidences of stress. कैपिटलिस्टिक सोसाइटी है, प्रेशर ऑफ परफॉर्मेंस है, बहुत ज्यादा कंपटीशन है, ठीक है. सो क्योंकि पेट्रियार्कल माइंडसेट है, women is treated as a cushion against whom you can vent out your frustration. So in nuclear families also the incidences of violence is very high. Is that clear? Then largely it is the institutional weakness, lack of stringent laws, lack of proper implementation of laws, lack of gender sensitive attitude of various stakeholders, and most importantly, lack of certainty with respect to these laws. Is that clear? Is this clear for everyone? Yes, Anushka, obviously now you know we have added that. Okay, modern style of living and rapid technological advances can also be blamed. हाँ, कह सकते, absolutely. More and more commodification and objectification due to social media. बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल कर सकते हो. Is that clear? Now, there have been so many initiatives which have been taken to address the violence against women issues. ठीक है? But despite that, violence against women is still existing. What can be the factors? Write down a UPSC question before we proceed. Write down a UPSC question. This is UPSC question, 10 marker question. Despite legal provisions, violence against women is on the rise in India. Discuss. Can you identify the reasons that why despite violence against there are legal provisions for the safety of women, but despite those legal provisions, it is still high. Shivam, obviously it is the government, it is the entire setup which needs to be held accountable. Whether it is judiciary, judiciary कहती है कि pendency of cases इसलिए ज्यादा है क्योंकि हमारे पास judges नहीं हैं, हमारे पास वर्कफोर्स नहीं है, इसीलिए हमने फास्ट ट्रैक कोर्ट एस्टैब्लिश करे थे कि जितने भी पॉक्सो रिलेटेड पेंडिंग केसेस हैं या रेप रिलेटेड पेंडिंग केसेस हैं, अभी 2 साल पहले मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ लॉ एंड जस्टिस हैज एस्टैब्लिश मोर देन 1000 फास्ट ट्रैक कोर्ट्स on in specifically in those areas where there is very high pendency of cases with respect to POXO and rape. But the point here is obviously we have lack of infrastructure. That is one of the major problem. And secondly, we have lack of will to improve the status of women. And that will is missing to improve the status of women or to protect them or to ensure judicial implementation of these provisions. Why? Because when women themselves are not raising voice for their rights. So that is the problem here. Is that very clear? Now, despite legal provisions, violence against women is on the rise. It was a 10-marker question which UPSC asked. Now, we have already discussed these were the provisions which were there for women, whether it is Domestic Violence Act, whether Dowry Prohibition, Sexual Harassment, Immoral Trafficking Prohibition Act, or Criminal Law Amendment Act. Despite these legal provisions, violence against women is on the rise. This is the reason why violence against women is on the rise. Just look at the points, and if you don't understand any point, please let me know. First and foremost, poor conviction rate. There is lack of certainty that an individual would be punished. Remember when we were discussing caste? I told you it is not the severity of the law, it is the certainty of the law which acts as a deterrent factor. So poor conviction rate acts as a means to ensure lack of deterrence because the person knows that he would not be punished for the offense that they have committed. Is that very clear? Second, the justice system needs to undergo a reform because there is so much delay in judicial proceedings that we all know justice delayed is nothing but justice denied. So that is another set of problem which needs to be addressed. Most importantly, despite these laws, violence against women is on the rise because women themselves do not approach the appropriate authority because they don't have the awareness about it. Remember the data? Only 7% of the women were able to reach the appropriate authority. Then there is a fear of stigmatization since women is associated with the prestige of the family. So there is always a fear, kalank lag jayega, if women would be open about the fact that she has been harassed, molested. Is that very clear? Chastity of women is considered as a sign of purity. So obviously nobody wants that stigma to be associated with the women. So because of that fear of stigmatization, there is lack of reporting. Is that clear? Then most importantly, why I think kisne to pucha abhi that you have so many laws, but those laws are only good on paper. They have not been implemented. The reason being those laws are not focusing on the attitudinal change, right? Law cannot work in silos. It has to be accompanied with adequate change in the attitude. Remember last class, caste wali class, I gave you a statement of Andre Bete that law determines the direction in which society should move. But actually it is the culture which determines the direction in which society actually moves. So any amount of law in the absence of attitude would not give you the desired result. Is that clear? Most importantly, even the law enforcement agencies have gender biased attitude. So again, on the similar lines as that of the problem faced by SC/ST people, they don't want to go through this rigorous process of, filing a complaint, then, for hearing, appeal, because at every stage, women again has been discriminated. So there is a fear. So that is why, because of this gender biased attitude also, they don't want to report the cases. Then there is corruption of value system. The state has failed to provide adequate infrastructure. You do not have gender segregated data. Jab data is the new oil, this you will be hearing every now and then in our lectures, that data is very concrete input so as to ensure proper policy making and implementation. Jab tak data nahi hoga, how would you get to know whether your policies have been efficient or not? If you don't know your policies are efficient, you would not be able to identify the loopholes, you would not be able to plug in the loopholes. So it is very important to have proper data. There is lack of reporting or underreporting due to known accused. In many of the cases, the violence has been committed by a known person so as to maintain the integrity of the family, right? So as to maintain the integrity of the community, women is being forced not to report the case. Is that very clear? Then obviously improper implementation. Then what is this broken window theory? Let me just explain. Broken window theory says, listen carefully, it's a psychological thing. If for a petty crime, for a small crime, at an early stage, you are not being reprimanded. Reprimanded as in you've not been punished, you've not been held accountable. Then the probability of committing heinous offense in the later stage is very high. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? So it says that if for a petty crime at an early stage, you are not being reprimanded, then the probability, लिख लो ये चीज, broken window theory के लिए, you might use it somewhere. हम इसे use कर सकते हैं juvenile delinquency में. There it would be very perfectly fit there, juvenile delinquency, the crime committed by children. So if for petty crime at an early stage, for petty crime at an early stage, you are not reprimanded, then the probability of committing heinous offense at the later stage is very high. Then the probability of committing heinous offense at a later stage is very high. Is this very clear for everyone? Okay, we have some points. Let me just go through the points. Very less women in the system. Male are generally having patriarchal. हाँ ठीक है, perfect आदित्य. स्निग्धा ठीक है. समीन, executive authorities are corrupt. ठीक है. अबू, हाँ कह सकते हैं अबू. That's more, the cases can be also high because of more reporting. That is one of the factor. Yeah. It can be because of more reporting. And second thing is that education has nothing to do with patriarchy. Even though southern states are educated states, but the instances of patriarchy is very high in southern states. That is the problem which lies in the attitude. So एक जो perception था ना कि education दे देंगे, ठीक है, या employment दे देंगे women को. So overall, you know, women empowerment की schemes launch कर देंगे, बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ, one stop center, ये सब कर देंगे. So women empowerment will usher. ऐसा कुछ नहीं होगा. Till the time the attitude remains patriarchal, you would not be able to bring about requisite changes. Is this very clear? So just by ensuring education, heinous मतलब grave crime. Okay, basically तीन तरह के crimes होते हैं: petty crime, serious crime, heinous crime. So if I go by IPC, that, you know, how do you define? Petty crime is any crime for which, according to Indian Penal Code, the punishment is less than 3 years. Serious crime is a crime for which punishment lies between 3 to 7 years. Heinous crime is a crime in which the punishment, according to Indian Penal Code, is more than 7 years. So heinous crimes like rape, murder, that is heinous crime. Is this clear? Aditya, now did you get the point? Heinous or serious में भी फर्क है. So there are 3 set of crimes: petty crime, serious crime, heinous crime. ठीक है? Is this clear for everyone? समझ आ रहा है ना टॉपिक हम क्या डिस्कस कर रहे हैं? Now, will you be able to answer this question? Will you be able to answer this question that despite legal provisions, violence against women is on the rise? It's a UPSC question. You start with the introduction, where you provide the statistics with respect to increase violence against women. Then you talk about the legal provisions to address the violence. Then despite these provisions, it is still increasing. What are the reasons? This become the body. And in conclusion, you will suggest few measures. What needs to be done in order to address the crisis? Is that clear? Is that clear? Can we proceed? Now, implication of violence against women. This is one thing which I added because I thought that you might get a question. Then why it has become so important to address the problem of violence against women? So what are the implications of violence against women? Is that clear? Again, you have a choice. You can write the implication at individual level, at family, societal level, national level, international level. International as in the status of nation at the global level. That's your choice. You could have done it that ways also. Okay? However, it can be done like this also. Health implication, economic implication, developmental implication, rights implication. So with respect to or in context of health, in context of economic aspect, developmental aspect, right aspect, how it can be answered. Is this clear? Now with respect to health, violence against women is characterized as a preventable cause of morbidity and mortality in women. Morbidity matlab disease, mortality matlab death. It's a preventable thing. Agar violence against women nahi hoga, you can prevent morbidity and mortality in women. So that is health aspect. It negatively impacts the mental, physical, reproductive health of women. That is health implication with respect to violence against women. Is that clear? Second is the economic aspect. Economic aspect, while you are discussing, you can divide it in two parts, the direct cost and indirect cost. Direct cost, obviously, violence against women, loss of income, loss of productivity, loss of health. Maybe let us say sexual harassment happening against women at workplace and she has withdrawn herself from the labor market. There is loss of income. Okay. Maybe she is subjected to violence at workplace or at public place or at home. So it negatively impacts her productivity because she is continuously under physical, mental, emotional stress. So it is impacting her productivity, which anyway will have economic ramification. And thirdly, since it's a cause of morbidity and mortality, it will have a health cost associated to it. So that is direct economic disadvantage of violence against women. However, there is indirect cost also which is associated. For example, the cost which is being borne by the child. Intergenerational cost which is associated. If continuously you are a witness to the fact that your mother or any of your female family member is subjected to violence, it has a negative impact on your psyche. Similarly, it might increase the incidences of female and child mortality. It will have intergenerational, social and psychological cost. So there are both direct as well as indirect cost associated. First point. बच्चे अबू preventable cause है. Preventable cause as in the women, okay, let me put it this way. Women, let us say, is dying a natural death. Okay? However, women died because a violence was committed against her, right? And that violence could have been prevented. Do you realize if your women dies, you are losing out on a potential human capital? which not only is negatively impacting that individual, obviously that person has died, it will have a ramification for her family. It might have ramification for her loved ones. It will also have a serious ramification for the nation, because one potential human capital who could have generated economic prosperity for the nation has been lost. So I will try to prevent the cause of unnatural mortality. If she has died a natural death, okay, that is bound to happen. Everybody who is born will die some or the other day. But if she died because of violence was committed against her, she was being raped and murdered. Let me put it this way, or a domestic violence was being committed against her because of which she died. So that violence was a preventable cause. It could have been prevented, but we did nothing to prevent her. So obviously it resulted into mortality in women. Similarly, morbidity, disease, mental disease. The women can be subjected to depression, anxiety, fear, or some other disease which has been inflicted on her. Why? Because a violence was being committed against her. Did you get the point? For example, violence in girl child, unko deliberately that hormonal injections, the chemical injections are being given so that they attain sexual maturity at an early stage. What if it results into some disease? Right? So that disease could have been prevented if you would have prevented the violence against women. यही पहला point था ना? हाँ. Abu, did you understand now? So it's a preventable cause, a cause of morbidity and mortality in women, which could have been prevented due to proactive intervention of different stakeholders, whether family, whether NGOs, whether government, whether administration, whether judiciary, whatsoever, whether women herself. Is this very clear? ठीक है? Intergenerational, Ashish, okay. A mother, let me put it this way. A mother has been, who is a wife to someone, is being domestically abused, okay, constantly. So she is under that depression, she is suffering from anxiety, would that not have impact on the education of child? Would that not have impact on the psyche of the child? Right? So it is not only impacting your social development, your psychological development, it has intergenerational impact. मतलब दूसरी generation पर भी negative impact आ रहा है. What if your girl child doesn't want to marry ever? Because she believes that if you get married, this is how you've been subjected to. है ना, intergenerational impact. What if your boy child learns to commit violence because of this impact? Because that is how he has been socialized. He has seen his grandfather beating grandmother, father beating mother. So this is how he has been brought up. So he is also very aggressive and dominant. There can be a counter impact also, but I'm just giving a point to justify this. It can have an intergenerational impact. Is that very clear? Social and psychological cost is associated to it. Weak personality, meek personality. किस तरह का socialization family में होता है, that largely shapes the personality of the children. I have seen lot of children, I've seen lot of my friends who had social fear. They were not confident about putting across their viewpoints, even though I should actually thank my parents for that right from the childhood, whether I was confident about my viewpoints or not, but I never shied away from reflecting them for, openly, explicitly letting others know about my viewpoint. If I was wrong, I was being corrected by my teachers, my family members, that is all. But I never shied away, because that is how I've been brought up. In my family, thankfully, both the male and the female child are equally treated, barring few incidences where my mother practiced patriarchy. But having said that, we have been equally treated. I have to be thankful to my family members because of this kind of socialization, and rest socialization has been provided by Delhi University. I mean, the kind of college I went to, I kind of जो थोड़ी बहुत कमी रह गई थी, जो फैमिली में थोड़ा बहुत पेट्रियार्की तो देखो है ही, अब उसको मैं डिनाई नहीं करूंगी, and I've been constantly giving you examples also, but that was compensated by my educational institute. and जो एक और थोड़ा nuanced expression आ गया, वो आ गया यूपीएससी की तैयारी से. But there are a lot of people who have been subjected to such kind of treatment within their family, that overall their personality becomes underconfident. They become meek. They become indifferent. ठीक है ना? They do not develop that compassion and empathy. So it has a cost associated to it, intergenerational cost. Did you understand? Then developmental issue. Obviously, women's participation in development and policy making is also obstructed because it obstructs their ability to act and move freely. आप participation तो तब करोगे ना पॉलिसी मेकिंग और डेवलपमेंट में जब आप में वो फियर नहीं होगा. यू कैन एक्सेस एनी प्लेस, यू कैन मूव फ्रीली. आज विमेन सरपंच तो बना देते हैं बिकॉज यू हैव अ रिजर्वेशन, बट विमेन सरपंच डजंट हैव अ कॉन्फिडेंस टू एक्ट फ्रीली बिकॉज शी नेवर नो व्हेन शी वुड बी reprimanded. She doesn't have the confidence to bring about social change because she never know when she would be abused. So your participation in development and policy making, your autonomy with respect to decision making gets obstructed because your obstruction exists with respect to your movement and act. You are not allowed to act or move freely. Is that very clear? Ashish, give me 5 minutes. I'll discuss everything, bachche. Give me 5 minutes. Right issue, obviously, it hinders with realization of fundamental rights, different fundamental rights. Violation of human rights hai. It negatively impacts your female labor force participation. It perpetuates gender inequality. Violence against women is not only detrimental to women, it is detrimental to the nation also. Estimated cost of violence against women is up to 3.7% of the GDP. It also acts as a hurdle for achievement of sustainable development goal number 1, that is poverty, goal number 3, that is health, goal number 4, that is education, and goal number 5, that is gender equality. So implication of violence against women can be discussed in whichever way that is suitable for you, but do prepare. It's a very important topic. Is that very clear? What needs to be done? टीम अगर थोड़ी सी ब्राइटनेस बढ़ा दो. आई एम सो सॉरी, मैं आपको बार बार परेशान कर रही हूं, बट इज इट विजिबल? सबको दिख रहा है ना जो भी है स्क्रीन पे? सो इफ यू कैन लुक एट इट, I have tried to divide it as short-term way forward and long-term way forward. ठीक है, उसका रीजन है. Whenever we are writing way forwards, I always believe that थोड़ा सा streamline कर देना चाहिए. तो either way forward can be written as short-term and long term. That's one way. Or you can also write way forward as infrastructural way forward. क्या infrastructure create करें? How to ensure proper implementation. And finally, what steps should be taken to change the attitude? So there are different ways. Socio-political economic तो है ही, वो तो हमेशा से रहेगा. That's one way of doing it. ठीक है ना? So way forward can be short term, long term, or it can be infrastructural, implementational, attitudinal, or it can be social, political, economic, cultural, whatsoever it is. जैसे लिखना चाहो. ठीक है, मुझे ऐसा लगता है दिस इज माई फेवरेट वे ऑफ राइटिंग. लार्जली मैं इस तरह से लिखती हूँ. उसके 2 रीजंस हैं कि अगर केस स्टडी भी आ गई, that if you are a district magistrate who has been posted in so and so area where there has been increased incidences of violence against women, what would be the immediate steps that can be taken? So you should know what short-term steps can be taken. इसलिए this kind of is my personal favorite. बाकी आप कुछ भी लिख सकते हो. As long as it is contextually correct and relevant, you can write anything. Short-term way forward, strict enforcement of laws, quick disposal of cases through fast-track courts. Clear है? Strict patrolling or vigilance at night specifically. वैसे तो दिन में भी, but strict patrolling and vigilance specifically at night. training of women in self-defense, promotes the concept of community policing and mohalla committees. Community policing ka matlab, let us say the police administration of your area would cooperate or coordinate with few locals in that area. So that is, community is participating or is supporting in better policing of that area. So that is community policing. मोहल्ला कमेटी क्या होती है? जैसे रेसिडेंट वेलफेयर एसोसिएशंस नहीं होते हैं, तो अपने मोहल्ले में एक कमेटी बना ली मोहल्ले के लोगों से ही. इसमें ऑफिशियल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का कोई लेना देना नहीं होता. यू हैव क्रिएटेड योर ओन कमिटीज, नेबरहुड कमेटी भी कहते हैं, एंड इट इज ऑल्सो नोन एज मोहल्ला कमेटी, बिकॉज पड़ोसी नोज द बेस्ट व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन योर प्लेस. कितना दहेज आया, व्हाट इज डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस और टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट इट इज हैपनिंग, एवरीथिंग अ पड़ोसी नोज इट वेरी वेल. सो मोहल्ला कमेटी, राइट? Then regulation of public transport, emergency button, GPS system, all of that. Setting up of helplines and mobile apps. Social innovations, matlab few innovative measures. For example, one-stop center, महिला पुलिस वॉलंटियर, ये OSC मतलब वन स्टॉप सेंटर, MPV मतलब महिला पुलिस वॉलंटियर, ऑल महिला पुलिस स्टेशन एक्सेट्रा. आप और भी पॉइंट्स डाल सकते हो. अगर आपको कोई और इनोवेटिव मेजर समझ आए आप वो लिख देना. क्रिएट रिड्रेसल मैकेनिज्म विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू साइबर वायलेंस. मैकेनिज्म टू प्रोटेक्ट द प्राइवेसी एंड द डिग्निटी ऑफ द विक्टिम. यूज ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी टू क्रिएट जेंडर फ्रेंडली इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर एंड स्पेस. इज दैट क्लियर? सीसीटीवी कैमरास इंस्टॉल कर देना, ठीक है, या ग्रीवांस रिड्रेसल सिस्टम या कोई इमरजेंसी पॉइंट क्रिएट कर देना. जैसे ड्यूरिंग दिस कोविड पैंडेमिक यूनाइटेड नेशन ने रिकमेंडेशन दिया था दैट ये जो फार्मेसीज होते हैं, ग्रोसरी स्टोर होते हैं, इसमें इमरजेंसी बटन या इमरजेंसी मैकेनिज्म होना चाहिए, सो एज टू प्रोटेक्ट द वुमेन फ्रॉम डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस. भाई घर में बंद थी, इंसिडेंसेस ऑफ डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस बढ़ गए थे, बट एटलीस्ट दे वर अलाउड टू गो टू फार्मेसी, or they might take permission to go to pharmacy or grocery shopping for the family, where they can, press that button and everything, and emergency notification can be provided to National Commission for Women or the State Commission, and they can work for their welfare. Help can be reached to them. So basically, use of technology to create gender-friendly infrastructure. Is that clear? Then, long-term way forward. Long-term. आज या कल में नहीं होने वाला. It will take time. Moral overhauling of society. Value-based education without any gender coloration. Gender sensitization of all stakeholders. Destigmatization of violence against women. ये जो purity pollution का concept है, बस बहुत हो गया. Now it needs to be done away with. So destigmatization of violence against women. क्रिएट अवेयरनेस अमंग वुमेन. ये मैंने लॉन्ग टर्म में इसलिए डाला है कि रातों रात अवेयरनेस नहीं आ जाती. आप शॉर्ट टर्म में भी डाल सकते थे, बट आई थिंक अवेयरनेस जनरेशन हैज टू बी डन एज अ कंटिन्यूड प्रोसेस ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. So awareness generation among women through various interventions. For example, social media outreach, charismatic personalities lending their voice to the problem of violence against women. Street plays. I think शायद मैंने आपको बताया भी है स्ट्रीट प्ले, कि स्ट्रीट प्ले में बहुत पावर होती है to bring about change. अब मुझे नहीं पता मैंने आपकी क्लास में डिस्कस किया कि नहीं, but there was a time when in 1970s and 80s नुक्कड़ नाटक, street play has immense power to bring about political change, complete overhauling of political system. There was a very infamous incident in context of Bihar. These street plays के through इतनी awareness generation होती थी that many a times the government which was in power was toppled. So there was one such incident when the father of Indian street play, he's known as Safdar Hashmi, was performing a play. The name of the play was Halla Bol. There was a movie also by the same name. So when he was performing the play, he was being assassinated because that was the power of street play at that point of time. आज क्योंकि इतना वेस्टर्न हो गया है, सब कुछ हो गया, everybody prefer theatre but stage theatre. आज नुक्कड़ नाटक की वैल्यू खत्म हो गई है या कम हो गई है to be very precise. लेकिन रूरल सेटअप में and people who are unable to read, write. For them, these Nukkad Nataks have lot of potential to bring about change in their psyche. And not only these people who cannot read and write, this is my personal experience of Delhi University. Thankfully, they still encourage street play. I have seen that ये जो एक demonstration होता है ना, through play, through storyline, on social issues, it has a very long lasting impact on your psyche. I told you, I don't know, अभी शायद मैंने women की class में आपको बताया था, there was a play which was done by Gargi College, and I think I have told you this, on a male issue, that I was from LSR, and that time when I directed the play, my play was called Daman. That was basically from the point of view of women. This ye jo entire violence against women and from womb to tomb. This is what I catered in 2006 when in my college, I prepared the play. But I was so inspired by Gargi College play because for the very first time, the girls' college, to be very precise, how it is stereotyped, the girls' college has raised the issue of men. Remember, and that play had an impact on my psyche, and such a long lasting impact. For very first time, I started looking at men and I started observing the plight of men. It did have an impact on my psyche. This is what I'm trying to say. Street plays have lot of potential to bring about significant change because often street plays are made on social issues. बट अब इसको थोड़ा इंकरेज करने की जरूरत है. नेक्स्ट, इंगेज विथ मेन एंड बॉयज एज चेंज एजेंट. ही फॉर शी कैंपेन. इनफैक्ट यूपी के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में एक अच्छा इनिशिएटिव आया था, बेल बजाओ. मतलब जिसमें मेन एंड बॉयज को बोला गया था, इफ यू हर्ड एनी इंसिडेंट्स ऑफ डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस, कीप प्रेसिंग द बेल so as to tell the person who's committing violence that listen, there is a witness to your act. So the men and boys have to take initiative to bring change in the status of women in the society. He for she campaign. Boys raising voice for girls. Need for convergence approach. मतलब ये नहीं होता कि वायलेंस अगेंस्ट विमेन एक इशू है, इसको एड्रेस कर दो. नहीं, प्रॉपर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर चाहिए, प्रॉपर पॉलिसीज चाहिए, प्रॉपर इंप्लीमेंटेशन चाहिए, फंडिंग फाइनेंस चाहिए, पॉलिटिकल विल चाहिए, ट्रेन्ड पर्सोनल्स चाहिए, अवेयरनेस जनरेशन चाहिए, एटीट्यूडनल चेंज चाहिए. देयर हैज टू बी अ कन्वर्जेंस अप्रोच which is the need of the hour. Is this clear for everyone? Is it making sense? क्लियर है? अब एक मिनट रुकना. आशीष, आई जस्ट आंसर योर डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस. हम अभी डिस्कस करने वाले हैं, बट बिफोर दैट, कहां पर है यार, मुझे याद नहीं आ रहा. इस बार का क्वेश्चन था यूपीएससी में. रीड द क्वेश्चन. Though women in post-independent India have excelled in various fields, the social attitude towards women and their movement has been patriarchal. So apart from women education and women empowerment schemes, what intervention can help changing this setup? श्रीचरण, हाँ, कह नहीं सकते हैं. एक्चुअली इतना सोच के मैंने डाला नहीं था श्रीचरण. आई एक्चुअली विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू द टाइम विच इज रिक्वायर्ड, आई अंडरस्टूड योर पॉइंट, बट माई कंसर्न वॉज मोर दैट विच गोल्स कैन बी अचीव्ड on an early basis, as in within a span of a year or two. The goals can be achieved, can be put under short term, and the goals for which a long time is required, 5, 10, 15, in fact generation, so that would be put under long term. That is what I meant. ठीक है. Just read the question. Don't try to read the answer. Just read the question. This is this year's question. हाँ आदित्य, absolutely, absolutely. Socialization. One needs to be vocal about the reality. जस्ट रीड द क्वेश्चन, आंसर तो मैं अब डिस्कस कर ही लूंगी, बट मुझे सिर्फ क्वेश्चन पढ़ के बताओ कि समझ आ रहा है व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन ट्राइंग टू से. दिस इज दिस ईयर्स क्वेश्चन. हाँ ना तो बोलो. Though women in post-independent India have excelled in various fields, the social attitude towards women and the movements have been patriarchal. Absolutely, absolutely, Aditya. Absolutely. Yes. That's what I'm saying. We treat that we are doing something which was not required. It is their right. You are not doing or you're not obliging them. It is their right and they deserve it. Question समझ आ रहा है? हाँ समीम, गुड. फर्स्ट पार्ट नहीं समझ आ रहा. किसने पूछा ये? रवि. रवि बच्चे, इट इज सेइंग कि पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया में ऐसा तो नहीं है कि विमेन एक्सेल नहीं कर रही है. यू हैव छवि रजावत, यू हैव किरण मजुमदार शो, सो फाल्गुनी नायर, यू हैव सो मेनी पीपल, इंदिरा नूई. ठीक है. सो देर आर लॉट ऑफ विमेन स्पोर्ट्स पर्सन, साइना नेहवाल, सानिया मिर्जा. तो ऐसा तो नहीं है women cricketers that वो excel नहीं कर रहे हैं. So whether it is field of corporate, whether it is political field, whether it is decentralization, democratic decentralization at the lowest level, that is panchayati raj. ठीक है. So या economic field या फिर sports field, everywhere women are doing well. So ऐसा नहीं है that women are not doing well. But despite that, still this is the attitude of patriarchy which is very prevalent in our society. Is that clear? So now the question which the government asked you, that हम हमेशा कहते थे as a way forward, educate women or implement women empowerment schemes. So now government is asking you, UPSC is asking you, भैया education of women empowerment schemes छोड़कर बताओ what is supposed to be done in order to address this problem of patriarchal attitude. Because every time the solution to address the challenge of patriarchy is education, value-based education. Right? So this is what we talk about, कि educate करो, women empowerment schemes लेकर आओ. So whether it is maternity benefit scheme or Indira Gandhi Matritva Yojana, so whether Ujjwala scheme. So apart from women empowerment schemes, what more needs to be done? और यहाँ पे उज्ज्वला वाला वो सिलेंडर, गैस सिलेंडर वाली स्कीम की बात कर रही थी मैं. So apart from that, what more needs to be done? Is that clear? Ma'am, how you get lot of patience to write the notes neatly? But start कैसे करें नहीं आया. अंजू, start मैं भी बता देती हूँ कैसे करेंगे. बिल्कुल बिल्कुल समीम. Yes. How do I get the patience? What Nala generally saying, if you really meant to ask this question, I am still a very old school of thought. Right? So for me, that cut, copy, paste वाला PPT वो तभी work करता है if I get access to some content which is self-explanatory or which is comprehensive and I have nothing more to add to it. Only then I prefer that PPT. Secondly, I still have that old school of thought where I prefer writing it with hand. So the reason is it helps improving your speed, it helps improving your spellings, it helps improving your handwriting. So you might be thinking कि अब क्या जरूरत है ये करने की, but somehow I am conscious about these things, right? So that old school of thought is still working. That everybody do ask that टाइप करके कर सकते हो, जल्दी हो जाएगा, but मेरे को जमता नहीं है. तो ये चीज है, इसलिए बस. तो पेशेंस इसलिए है क्योंकि मुझे पसंद है. आई एम डूइंग समथिंग विच इज अकॉर्डिंग टू माई विल. Nobody is forcing me to do that. Aksar people lose out on their patience when they are forced to do something. That is why I often ask my students that enjoy your preparation. The more you start enjoying your preparation, not worrying about the result, the more patience you will acquire. दिस इज व्हाट आई बिलीव. तो अगर आप मन का काम करोगे ना तो आप ऑटोमेटिकली पेशेंस आ जाएगा अपने आप में. ठीक है. सो कैन वी स्टार्ट. अंजू ने पूछा था. हाँ, तो अंजू, this is for you. This is how you can start, बच्चे. Introduction. We'll establish a paradox that the status of women in the post-independence India has changed significantly. ये तो हम मानते हैं. So, because of socio-economic political scenario, there has been a change in the status of women. And what has been the status of women, that you can see from the progress that the women has made in various fields. So I have tried to take example from different fields and just feel free to add any example to it. Okay. However, the main content is the second part, that what more interventions are required. So in the first part, if you can look at the question also, clearly in the question there is a paradox only. So you have to establish that paradox, that the status of women has improved. And it has improved, which is quite visible or evident by the progress that women has made in various fields. And you can give example. However, it is ironical. I have to establish a paradox. So that was, Anju, the first part. I hope you understood. So whenever you see such questions where there is a paradox or something, especially women में हमेशा दिखेगा. तो आप इस तरह से शुरुआत कर सकते हो कि एक तरफ दिखाओ कि भाई इंप्रूवमेंट हो रहा है, बट दूसरी तरफ आयरॉनिकल देखो कि आज भी सोसाइटल एटीट्यूड कंटिन्यूज टू बी पेट्रियार्कल. और वो कहां देखने को मिलता है? सबरीमाला का इशू है. वायलेंस अगेंस्ट वुमेन इज ऑन द राइज. वेज गैप एग्जिस्ट है. Decline in female labor force participation, dual burden, inadequate political representation. This is clearly the testimony of the fact that patriarchal attitude is very much entrenched in our system. Is that clear? Is it making sense? Right. Now, once you've written the introduction, time and again I've been trying to say, linking para is very important. See, I am not asking you ये सारी problems लिखना, क्योंकि obviously time crunch होता है, 10 या 15 नंबर का question होता है. There is a time crunch. अगर आप 2-3 प्रॉब्लम्स भी हाईलाइट कर दोगे हो जाएगा. आई हैव गिवन यू अ कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव लिस्ट ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स सो एज टू इंश्योर दैट यू कैन रिलेट टू द क्वेश्चन. लिंकिंग पैरा का काम होता है टू इंश्योर स्मूथ ट्रांजिशन फ्रॉम द इंट्रोडक्शन टू द बॉडी, एंड दिस हेल्प्स यू कनेक्टिंग योर इंट्रोडक्शन टू द मेन थीम ऑफ द क्वेश्चन. So despite government intervention with respect to women education and empowerment, बहुत सारी schemes launch करी हैं, women continues to have inferior status. So what further interventions are required? एक लाइन में. और ये भी जरूरत नहीं है कि आप इतने सारे लिखो, आप 2-3 भी लिख देते तो चलता. बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ, ICDS इंटीग्रेटेड चाइल्ड डेवलपमेंट स्कीम, देन मैटरनिटी बेनिफिट एक्ट, स्वधार गृह, ये सब है. डिस्पाइट दैट वुमेन हैज इंफीरियर स्टेटस, व्हाट मोर इंटरवेंशंस आर रिक्वायर्ड. अब आप बॉडी लिख दो. इज दिस वेरी क्लियर? ठीक है. सो विमेन सेफ्टी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्रिएट करो टू इंश्योर विमेन सेफ्टी. सोशलाइजेशन करो विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू जेंडर न्यूट्रल वैल्यूज. सो चाहे फैमिली लेवल हो, स्कूल लेवल हो, एटीट्यूड चेंज इज द नीड ऑफ द आवर. द रिस्पॉन्सिबल रोल ऑफ सिनेमा can play a very significant role. For example, Secret Superstar movie like Dangal, it had a very good impact on the psyche of the people. So cinema can also play a very significant role in changing the attitude with respect to women. और ये मैंने डिटेल में लिखा है, आप एक एक लाइन में लिख सकते हो. दिस इज मोर फॉर योर एक्सप्लेनेशन. ठीक है. Then women friendly workplaces and inclusive attitude. For example, safe environment, creche facility, address the issues of glass ceiling, balancing maternity leave with paternity leave. तो सिर्फ स्कीम्स की जरूरत नहीं है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को इंक्लूसिव करो, जेंडर फ्रेंडली करो. थप्पड़ एब्सोल्युटली. या सो सिनेमा के रोल को, या फिर सोशलाइजेशन विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू जेंडर न्यूट्रल वैल्यूज, वेदर एट द लेवल ऑफ फैमिली और एट द लेवल ऑफ स्कूल. इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर टू इंश्योर सेफ्टी ऑफ वुमेन. देन एड्रेसिंग द इशू ऑफ unpaid work. Then administrative reforms, gender sensitization introduce karo in the training modules of police personnel and government officials. Is that clear? Gender sensitization in training modules of police personnel and government officials. Gender inclusion karo, especially in police force, matlab more representation of women in the police force. So administrative reforms. रिफॉर्म इन मीडिया, recognize करो women achievers को who can further act as role models. एक term है, I'll be using time and again, vicarious reinforcement. So I think I've used it before also. Vicarious reinforcement मतलब if for an act of yours you've been rewarded, right, and that has been publicly visualized, ठीक है, or promoted, propagated, so the tendency of a common man to replicate that behavior is very high. So if good people are awarded, we will have a tendency to replicate their behavior. हमारे यहाँ क्या होता है, किसी को भी पद्मश्री उठा के दे देते हैं. So the point here is कि पद्मश्री ना हो गया कि मतलब लो, you are a sycophant, you take Padmashri. You are another sycophant, you take Padmashri. Whereas on the other hand, people who are genuinely doing good work, they are not being rewarded. तो फिर कैसा vicarious enforcement होगा? आप भी sycophant ही बनोगे फिर? Did you get my point? So women achievers needs to be recognized publicly, who can further act as role models. Then role of NGOs, civil society, proactive participation of male in society to correct the gender biasness. Then reform in justice system, speed up the trials to act as a deterrent factor. Provide women with more leadership opportunities, greater political representation and participation of women. For example, passage of women reservation bill. And before that, political parties should come forward and issue tickets to the women candidates. And then you can conclude. Just one disclaimer. आप बोलोगे मैम 10 नंबर में इतना सब कैसे लिख सकते हैं? बिल्कुल नहीं लिख सकते. I don't expect you to write all these points. I expect you to write maximum 5 points. Right? 5 to 6 points. That's it. I have given you a comprehensive answer just to tell you that whatever we... अच्छा, एक भी ऐसा point है जो अभी तक हमने नहीं पढ़ा हो women issues में. Is there anything which is new which I've written? Everything has been discussed. Right? All these points have been discussed somewhere or the other. That needs to be written. And finally, you can conclude that education and employment schemes might be necessary. However, they are not sufficient to ensure gender equality. Hence, a more comprehensive and a fundamental approach is required to make our women more empowered and effective contributor to the development of nation. Is this very clear? Clear here? Is this making sense for everyone? Can we proceed now? Did you understand how the answers have to be written? So this is one UPSC question of this year that we have discussed. Is this clear? So this is what I meant कि हम more or less discuss करेंगे. Ma'am, we will also discuss about the age marriage bill. Anju, December के current affairs में है. So surrogacy, this marriageable age, everything would be discussed in December current affairs. ठीक है? नहीं तो टीम ना मेरे को सुना देगी फिर, कहेगी मैम आपका सिलेबस कभी टाइम पे नहीं खत्म होता है फिर. ठीक है? एक चीज थी जेंडर वायलेंस एंड कोविड-19. उसका एक रीजन था दैट just कि whenever since COVID has been there, so I thought that every topic you should prepare slightly in connection with COVID. As I remember, हमने डिस्कस किया था कि COVID-19 and poverty, we discussed that, और 2020 में क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया यूपीएससी ने. Similarly, COVID-19 and health, ठीक है, COVID-19 and education, right? So there is very large probability that you might get a question COVID-19 and or COVID pandemic and women or violence against women. So in that context also बहुत briefly, हम सब discuss कर चुके हैं बहुत briefly. UN Women has called rise in gender violence as shadow pandemic. बस एक लाइन याद करनी है आपको, ठीक है? There has been reported increase in domestic abuse cases as reported by NCW. In the beginning only I have given you the data. 46% rise in violence against women. Maximum violence has been reported under two heads: right to live life with dignity and domestic violence. Domestic violence has emerged as shadow pandemic. बस उतना. Causes same रहते हैं जो हम discuss कर चुके हैं. Now, domestic violence during pandemic, why it has increased? ठीक है. So for that, ये सब हम कर चुके हैं. We have done overall causes. Domestic violence during COVID, why it has increased? By with restricted mobility, women has become more vulnerable. vis-a-vis physical, sexual, emotional abuse. WHO says that any disaster, whenever happens, it disrupts the social and physical environment, which otherwise would have kept the act of violence at bay. बे पे रखना मतलब किनारे पे रखना. Is that very clear? ठीक है. Please little bit elaborate. किस आयुषी, what I need to elaborate? एक बार बता दो बच्चे. What am I supposed to elaborate? I'll elaborate it for you. एक बार ये पॉइंट्स पढ़ो तो ना. आयुषी से पहले आयुषी. Acha, oh, sorry. I thought that different students have asked the question. Sorry, Ayushi, I got the point. You want me to elaborate how feminist movements are patriarchal? Nahin, the question was that societal attitude towards feminist movement are patriarchal. Right? For example, Me Too movement, hashtag Me Too. Can we call it, क्या कहते हैं, feminist movement? Obviously, we can call it. The societal attitude has been patriarchal. You are shaming the women who is coming out in open and talking about that she is being a victim of sexual harassment. Now, people are questioning the integrity of the women. I am not denying the fact that maybe some women might have misused it. I am not denying that possibility. But largely, women have not. Right? Those incidences of sexual harassment do exist, right? And it takes a lot of courage to come out in public and tell the world, look, I have been harassed, right? So, लेकिन अब यहाँ पे क्या है? Attitude is patriarchal. That she is trying to, वो क्या नहीं होता है? 2 rupee fame. That, you know, she is trying to gain her share of fame by putting the blame on some known person. Right? Then the charges of defamation is being put on the women who has come out in open. For example, Priya Ramani, very infamous incident, I'm sorry. Priya Ramani case where the counter charge of defamation was filed. However, the judgment which came was very progressive. The judgment came only with respect to this defamation. It said that women in public good to reveal the truth can talk about the incidences of harassment even after a decade also, and she would not be subjected to defamation case. So जो उनके against defamation case file हुआ था वो वापस ले लिया गया. So that was a progressive step. So this is how the attitude towards these movements are patriarchal. Not only the men are criticizing this, women are equally criticizing that, you know, अब क्या जरूरत है, बोलना था तो तब बोलते, अब क्यों बोल रहे हो, now you are trying to gain your share of fame. तब नहीं बोल पाए यार, हिम्मत नहीं पड़ी, नहीं बोल पाए, आज कर रहे हैं हिम्मत. तो ये तो नहीं कि सपोर्ट करो. You are trying to pass derogatory remarks against those women. Is that clear? तो ये कहने का मतलब है that the societal attitude towards them is patriarchal. That was the question, Ayushi. I hope you understood. Abu, very valid question, bache. But the point here is, this is not with every woman, right? There is something called individual value system. Okay? And the problem is that everybody nowadays, the overall value system has become so corrupt that everybody looks for their only, to serve their only vested interest. Now you know that if you want to remain in power, okay, you have to play the same tune as that of the government. So that is what they are doing. So the problem lies with that individual. It has nothing to do with male, female. The problem lies with the individual value system. कि हम ही ने ऐसे लोगों को, it's our fault that you have voted for such people, the people who have come to power, and see how they've been working. In fact, it is nothing to do with male and female. I will give you one example to clarify this argument. If you remember, how would you remember? 1985 में जब शाह बानो इंसिडेंट हुआ था, that incident, everybody is aware about Shah Bano incident. Shah Bano के time पे she was demanding alimony, ठीक है, and Muslim marriages में alimony is not given, right, after a period of iddat. So obviously she filed the case in Supreme Court and the court gave the judgment in her favor, ठीक है. There was this one minister in Congress government that time and his name was Muhammad Arif Khan, ठीक है. So Muhammad Arif Khan was a male belonging to a Muslim community, and all the male orthodox class that time was going protesting against Supreme Court judgment. And everybody told Rajiv Gandhi that Muslims are your major vote bank. If you don't overturn the Supreme Court judgment, you will lose out on your Muslim vote bank. And he did the same. He overturned the judgment. However, Muhammad Arif Khan did not like that. He said, how can you overturn the judgment? I have advocated, I have supported Supreme Court judgment in Parliament, and my own very party has overturned the judgment. I belong to same community. I know it is required for women empowerment. He was a male belonging to a Muslim community. He wanted to support the cause of women. However, when Rajiv Gandhi government overturned the judgment, Muhammad Arif Khan resigned. It is individuals' ethics. It is individuals' morality. So if few women are not standing by their morality or ethics, that does not mean that women should not be given the representation. The problem is we as a society, as a part of democratic setup, we should make sure that rather than voting for the party, vote for the candidate. Right? So party politics, it should come to an end. Whichever candidate you have in your area, because it is not one person who runs the government. There are 545 people who come together to run the government, right? So the point here is that you need to vote for the candidate. That individual candidate should have high morals. So the problem is not with women. The problem is how they are working. Is that clear? I hope we are clear on this. Can we proceed? हाँ, सुजाता, यस, ठीक है, चलो आगे बढ़े. Can we proceed? चलो. With restricted mobility, women have become more vulnerable. Vis-a-vis physical, sexual, emotional abuse. WHO says disaster disrupts the social and physical environment that would normally kept violence contained. Healthcare staff, police are overwhelmed and understaffed. There is shortage of fund. Domestic violence shelters were closed. As a result, it has fueled the impunity for perpetrators. That is lack of deterrence. So all these factors has made women more vulnerable to the incidences of domestic violence. Is that clear? So why domestic violence has increased during this COVID pandemic? These are the factors. कोई डेटरेंस नहीं है भाई, फंड्स नहीं है, हेल्थ केयर स्टाफ, पुलिस स्टाफ अंडरस्टाफ्ड है, ओवरवेल्म्ड है, डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस शेल्टर्स डजंट कम इन एसेंशियल सर्विसेज, सो दे आर क्लोज्ड, सो देयर इज लैक ऑफ डेटरेंस. These are few steps which are taken by the different government to address the crisis of domestic violence, whether it was channelizing of one-stop centers or National Commission for Women had launched a WhatsApp number, UP initiatives such as Suppress Corona, Not Your Voice, community radio program, Bell Bajao, then Empower One-on-One, that was a newly launched helpline in Mumbai to report domestic violence. These are few of the initiatives. Most importantly, you can search more initiatives. And if in case you belong to a certain state where some initiative has taken, please make a noting of it. Interview में बड़ा काम आएगा कि आपके state में क्या हुआ था. What measures have your state taken? तो आप respective अपने states के भी measure लिख सकते हो. NGOs like Stree Mukti Sangathan is helping women via providing them free counseling and use of online facility for reporting crime. So all of that can be written. Is this very clear for everyone? ठीक है, ये कुछ जुडिशियल इंटरवेंशन है, मतलब कहने का मतलब है कि आप अपने पॉइंट्स बना सकते हो. Somebody asked me, I think Ashish was asking me, what is domestic violence? So that's the next topic. एक यूपीएससी क्वेश्चन और लिख लो यार, फिर I'll proceed. Write down the question. कहाँ गया? एक मिनट यार बस दे रही हूँ. What are the continued challenges for women in India? What are the continued challenges for women in India against time and space? What are the continued challenges for women in India against time and space? 10 marker. What are continued challenges for women in India against time and space? Can we proceed? It's a 10 marker question. Try attempting the question. एक ऐसे टॉपिक लिखो तो, राइट डाउन ऐसे टॉपिक, यूपीएससी ऐसे टॉपिक. Fulfillment of new women. Can you try attempting the topic whenever you get time? Can you try attempting this topic whenever you get time? एक बार मुझे 2020 का भी एक एग्जैक्ट टॉपिक बताती हूँ. Patriarchy is least noticed, yet the most significant structure of social inequality. This was last year's topic. I told you now, women is their favorite topic. This year also they have asked on women. Hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Yeah, this is the topic for essay, Divyansh. This is the topic for essay. Fulfillment of new women in India is a myth. Another topic is patriarchy. I think this is 2018 if I'm not wrong. And this is 2020. Fulfillment of new women in India is a myth. The second topic is patriarchy is least noticed, yet the most significant structure of social inequality. See, I've taught you almost everything about women issue. Aditya, what is new women that you have to explore? That you have to explore. You are open to the interpretation of new women. What according to you is new women? For example, if I would have been in your place, I would have related it with the definition of women empowerment which I gave you. For me, new women is one who has sense of self-worth, who has access to different resources, who has autonomy in decision making, who has control over her reproductive life, who can lead the direction of social change in society. According to me, it is the concept of new women. It is open to interpretation. You can have your own understanding of new women. That needs to be explored through this essay of 1200 words. Absolutely, Anju. Independent women, aware women, empowered women. Ha, Shantanu, yeah, that is what I said. Absolutely, bache. Yes, you can do it. Is that very clear? See, everyone has their own interpretation. Feel free. लिखो 1200 वर्ड और जस्टिफाई करो अपने व्यू पॉइंट्स को. Yes, Anshul. Yes, yes, yes. It is. It is. Can we proceed now? Okay. Try attempting this whenever you get time. Try attempting this. Domestic violence. According to Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, domestic violence has one of the highest share in the violence against women. Premise. Supreme Court has ruled. What was the reason why it is in news? Supreme Court has ruled that women will have right to residence in the shared house, even if that house is rented, owned by in-laws, and husband has no ownership right. If the husband doesn't have any ownership right, despite that, women will have the right to residence in that shared house. Secondly, if due to some unfortunate incident, the husband has died, then brother-in-law has the liability to pay maintenance to the victim, if ever in their lifetime they have stayed together in a concept of joint family. Even for a month they have stayed, even for a day they have stayed as a joint family, then on the demise of the husband, the liability to pay the maintenance to the victim lies in the hand of brother-in-law. Is that clear? Now, I think Ashish was asking who or what is domestic violence. So domestic violence is defined as actual abuse or threat of abuse. It can be in the form of physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, okay, all of that, economic abuse, that would come under the definition of domestic violence. This act, Domestic Violence Act, clearly defines the definition of aggrieved women under the Domestic Violence Act. The aggrieved women can be a wife, she can be a mother, daughter, sister, or a live-in partner. And the recent addition is even a divorced wife can file the complaint under Domestic Violence Act. Is that very clear? Largely, Domestic Violence Act is a civil law. Why? Because the kind of relief which is provided to the aggrieved women. For example, the compensation, right to residence, custody of the child. So in these cases, it is a civil law. However, with respect to the protection order, if the wife is feeling threatened or any women is feeling, the women which is included under the set of aggrieved women is feeling threatened and has approached the court and the court has issued the protection order, and if those protection orders are breached, then there is basically it becomes a criminal offense. Is that clear? So only when protection orders are breached, it becomes cognizable and non-bailable, and there is a punishment for 1 year jail term or 20,000 rupees fine or both. There is a provision for protection officer and the NGOs so as to help women with respect to medical examination, safe shelter, legal aid, etc. Disclaimer, marital rape is not included under Domestic Violence Act. Is this clear? Is it making sense? Now, with respect to a specific starred note है ये, that बड़ा interesting था ये एक बार बता देती हूँ. I'm just telling you this so that for your future reference आपको पता हो Domestic Violence Act में क्या था. Actually, Domestic Violence Act में initially क्या था, that a woman can file a case against the adult male. This was the original act, that a woman can file the case against adult male. Court felt, Supreme Court, that this act is not gender neutral. So in order to make this act gender neutral, Supreme Court removed the term adult male. This adult male term has been removed. Now women can file a complaint against a male. She can file a complaint against a woman or female. She can file a complaint against a juvenile or a child. So Supreme Court has made this change to make this act gender neutral. However, it has been criticized. It has been criticized that still only a woman has a right to file the complaint, even though the term adult male has been removed. So obviously the intention of Supreme Court was good to make this act gender neutral, but then it has been criticized. Is that clear? So to make act gender neutral, the term adult male has been removed. Second, any kind of maintenance which has to be provided under the act will not depend upon the earning of the wife. The recent addition, live-in partner along with divorced wife can seek relief under this act. Live-in partner can seek maintenance and divorced wife against any kind of marital abuse. Is that very clear? With respect to maintenance, Supreme Court has clearly specified that the deserted wife and the children are entitled to the maintenance from the date they apply for it in the court. नहीं तो हमारे यहाँ तो इतनी पेंडेंसी है केसेस की कि जब तक जजमेंट आता तब तक आधी जिंदगी ऐसे ही निकल जाती. So the point here is you are entitled to the maintenance from the date you have applied for it in the court. Is it making sense for everyone out there? Now, write down a question. Write down a question. Discuss the factors responsible for domestic violence in India. A simple question. I just want you to think about it. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. अब कोशिश तो ये करी है कि अडल्ट मेल हटा दिया है, तो it is believed that husband through their sister or mother can file a complaint against the wife, because this channel has to be there, because even today only a woman can file the complaint. So even if husband has to file the complaint, he has to go through other women in the family. Is that clear? Adult male hata diya Anju. Supreme Court has removed the term adult male. Write down a question. Discuss the factors responsible for domestic violence incidences in Indian society. Obviously वो points मत लिखना जो हम पहले लिख चुके हैं. Institutionalization of patriarchy, lack of institutional measures, उसके अलावा कुछ specific points बताओ. Some specific points. We can add more points here. For example, cultural acceptance of domestic violence by both men and women. Gender social norm index UNDP, 28% of people believe it is absolutely justified for husband to beat their wife. 28% believes it is absolutely fine for a husband to beat wife. In context of nuclear families, the incidences of domestic violence is high as compared to joint family. Similarly, in context of illiterate women and unemployed women, that does not mean that among literate and employed women it doesn't happen. I am just saying with respect to illiterate women and unemployed women, the incidences of violence are more. The reason being they are not aware about their rights and entitlements. They do not have any alternatives. They are economically dependent on their husbands or on the male in the family. Is that clear? Due to patrilocality also, the girl has lack of support from her parents. Marriage is still considered as sacred, so there is lack of alternatives. Is that clear? Then socio-economic relations in urban areas are undergoing a change, which has further aggravated the incidences of violence. So with respect to urban areas also you can write the change in socio-economic relations in urban areas has threatened male hegemony, along with has challenged the traditional division of labor. Absolutely. The over-exaggeration of role of women as an agent of integration of family. So someone has talked about Sita syndrome. Yes. You dedicate your life, you create unrealistic image of women as self-sacrificing. Self-sacrificing image of women. So there is a fear that if she'll report the incidence of crime, it will result into breakdown of the family. Most importantly, it will lower the prestige or the status of the family will be negatively impacted. And it is the women who's considered the onus of maintaining the prestige and the status of the family in the society is on the women. आदमी कुछ भी करे, वो तो लड़कों से तो गलतियां हो जाती हैं. That is what the previous chief minister of UP said. लड़के हैं, गलती हो जाती है. So basically the entire onus of maintaining the prestige and the status of the family is on the women. Is that very clear? हाँ, डाउरी वगैरह सब लिख सकते हो, बिल्कुल लिख सकते हो. इंटरनलाइजेशन ऑफ पेट्रियार्की, हर्सिस, एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. बिल्कुल, हमने ये सारे पॉइंट करे हैं ना. आइडियोलॉजिकल इंडोक्ट्रिनेशन, इंटरनलाइजेशन ऑफ पेट्रियार्की, बिल्कुल लिख सकते हो. जो लिखना है वो सब लिखो. ठीक है, कैन वी प्रोसीड नाउ? Can we proceed? tomorrow we have class at 1 o'clock. Dowry. In fact, it is domestic violence and section 498A of IPC, which has been termed as new legal terrorism. I'll discuss this point in another 10-15 minutes, but before that, very quickly have a look at it. Dowry. Why are we even discussing dowry? It's an important factor which is responsible for sex-selective abortion, for infanticide among the girls, lack of investment in the education of girl child, domestic violence, overall skewed sex ratio. Actually, it is dowry which treats the women as an economic liability. That is why you don't want to invest in her education. Most importantly, you don't even want a girl child. So sex selective abortion. Then if sex selective abortion nahi ho pata, to girl infanticide. Then obviously she is subjected to domestic violence, as I think one of you have quoted how dowry is a factor responsible for domestic violence, overall skewed sex ratio. Now the question arises, what constitutes dowry? So any property or a security given or agreed to be given directly or indirectly by one party to a marriage to other party is referred as dowry. Dowry does not mean stridhan. The original concept was stridhan, where the gift, obviously yaar, pehle zamane mein kya hota tha, the girl was not working, then patrilocal marriages hoti thi, early marriage hoti thi, so some amount of money, gift, in cash or kind was given to the women so as to ensure her financial needs. Love marriage nahi hoti thi, arranged marriage hoti thi, so she is going altogether to a new place. So in order to ensure that she doesn't face any problem with her survival and sustenance, so the gift was given. The stridhan was supposed to be used by the girl, the bride. However, dowry is used by everyone other than the bride. So dowry and stridhan are different concepts. One should not equate them. Right. There is another custom, that is bride price. Tribal communities mein hota hai, where dowry is not given, but a price is given to purchase the bride from the family. Okay. This is what Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961 looks like. Dowry is considered as a cognizable offence. Suo motu cognizance can be taken. Every offence under this act is non-bailable. Zamanat nahi milegi as a matter of right. You have to approach the court to seek bail. It is non-compoundable. मतलब out of court settlement नहीं होगा. If the case is registered under Dowry Prohibition Act, the case would be heard by the court, by the magistrate, and only then it can be settled. Without being heard by the court, out of court settlement is not possible. That is non-compoundability. The burden of proof is on the accused, the person who is being accused of taking the dowry. It makes any agreement which is being made in context of giving or taking dowry as void. By prima facie, by virtue of it, the agreement would be declared void. There is provision for dowry prohibition officers, which has to be established by the respective state government. The punishment is given for both giving the dowry, taking the dowry, or abetting the giving or taking of the dowry. Demanding the dowry, an advertisement related to dowry, कि अगर आप हमारी बेटी से शादी करेंगे तो हम ये देंगे, या अगर आपको हमारे बेटे से शादी करनी है, this much which is supposed to be paid. So any advertisement, any demand of the dowry, or the process of giving the dowry, taking the dowry, abetting the dowry, everything is treated as a as a crime, which would be punished either by imprisonment or fine or both. What is the factor, or what are the factors which are responsible for increase in incidences of dowry? There has a data which I have wrote for you. 1930s, there were approximately 40% incidences of dowry. However, in 2000 or after 2000, there are 90% incidences of dowry. What an irony. With more education, with more economic prosperity, the social evil which should have been challenged has increased, and with such high rate or data. Now, what are the factors? The first, acceptance of culture of dowry by both men and women. It is not only men who are asking dowry and who are legitimizing the act of dowry, the women are equal party to it. The reason is internalization of patriarchy. Women has accepted herself that there is a hierarchical arrangement in the society where men has been accorded better status to that of the women. So this hierarchical arrangement of men and women, with men having better status than women in the society, justifies or has resulted into positive reinforcement of the social evil of dowry. First. Second, consumerist culture. There can be an end to your need, but there cannot be an end to your greed. This culture of consumption, the consumerist culture, which is a negative impact of globalization, has also increased the incidences of dowry. गाड़ी तो सिर्फ इधर से उधर जाने के लिए it's a means of transport, right? However, कौन सी गाड़ी, कौन सा मॉडल, कौन सा टेलीविजन, कौन सा बेड? Are you getting my point? ठीक है? How much gold? So there is no end to your greed. Your need can be tackled, but not your greed. So it is the consumerist culture which has increased the incidences of dowry. Dowry is also treated as an investment, give and take culture. To explain this point, let me give you a personal experience. We started our preparation in 2009. 2010 was our first attempt. We were a group of friends who were preparing for this examination. We were 8 of us. There was this one friend of mine. You will always find a friend, and nothing against. ऐसा नहीं है कि हम judge कर रहे हैं किसी को, but ये often होता है. You will always find 1 or 2 odd friends who are preparing for the exam, but you very well know, इनका नहीं होगा. मतलब, वो बात नहीं है. And UPSC exam, this person doesn't have the potential. So we had this one friend in that group of 8. And we tried to explain it to him also कि क्यों दे रहा है भाई, तेरे बस की नहीं है. मतलब जितना हमने जाना था पिछले 5 सालों में, what kind of a friend, मतलब what kind of a student or what kind of a person he is, whatsoever it is. Obviously, all 8 of us wrote our first attempt in 2010, and 5 of us cleared prelims, first stage. He was one among us who cleared. The one who we thought that is not meant for the exam, but he cleared. So we were like कि ठीक है, उस time पे prelims में optional भी आता था. मतलब instead of CSAT we had the optional in 2010. The pattern changed in 2011. So his optional was there. So we were like कि शायद optional की वजह से pre निकल गया. It happens. So 5 of us wrote mains and 3 of us cleared mains. He was one among who cleared mains. So again, we thought, yeah, 2 optionals हैं mains में. That time 2 optionals were there. So obviously one of his optional was very scoring and everything. So we thought that maybe because of that he is cleared. Interview happened and finally one of us cleared out of 8 of us, and it was him. So उस दिन तब तक 3 Idiots रिलीज नहीं हुई थी, but उस दिन मुझे एक्चुअली समझ आया था कि जब फ्रेंड फेल होता है तो बुरा लगता है, but जब वो टॉप करता है तो बहुत बुरा लगता है. So that was the thing. But anyhow, on a serious note, out of 8 of us, the one who cleared was him. And he scored around, I will not tell the rank. It was somewhere between 300 to 400. So he got IRS, right? So 2010 का attempt, he got IRS and he was very upset. And हम तो शॉक में थे कि एक तो हम में से किसी का नहीं हुआ, उसका हुआ और वो भी IRS मिला, and which is good. But he was very upset and मतलब literally he was very upset. ऐसा लग रहा था जैसे सिलेक्शन ही नहीं हुआ है. So हम गए भाई कि क्या हो गया, मतलब क्यों तुम इतने दुखी हो? He's like, नहीं, my father is very angry and everything. I was like, क्या हो गया? In my sister's marriage, my father spent 1 CR. One disclaimer, he was from Bihar. Nothing against Bihar, but those who all are from Bihar might relate to this example. So he said, my sister got married, my father spent 1 CR, and now he's telling me that you've not become IAS, you've become IRS. IRS का rate is only 40 lakhs. So he's very upset. हम सब शॉक में थे, and we were like, it justifies why we always said that he doesn't deserve to clear this exam. We were shocked. I was like, इतनी पढ़ाई के बाद, is this the mindset which is existing? And this is what he said. So this is no amount of education, no amount of clearing this UPSC exam. उसके बाद ethics paper डाला गया. तो मुझे लगा शायद ethics इसलिए UPSC ने डाला है that the people who will clear this exam will become ethical. But with all due respect, I am very hopeful that you guys will prove to be very good administrators. But मतलब बहुत ज्यादा कॉम्प्रोमाइज्ड एथिक्स है भाई, जाते ही कितनी डाउरी लेनी है सब तय हो जाता है. सो द पॉइंट हियर इज कि दिस इज हाउ द माइंडसेट एग्जिस्ट, गिव एंड टेक कल्चर, कि बहन की शादी में इतना खर्च किया है तो इतना लेना ही है. And let us suppose your sister is supposed to get married after you. Then also the pressure is that what if we don't take dowry? Let us say that you are telling us not to take dowry. Can you guarantee that your sister will get married in which we don't have to pay the dowry? What if we are supposed to pay the dowry, from where we will get the money? So this is more like a give and take culture, that you take it in your son's marriage and you spend it in your daughter's marriage. So that is how it works. Is that clear? Is it making sense? ठीक है. So consumerist culture, then it is treated as an investment. Then it is also identified. I was reading a research paper. तुम भी बोलोगे कि मैम इसके लिए क्या जरूरत थी रिसर्च पेपर पढ़ने की, बट थोड़ा सा ना क्रेडिबल एक हाथ लग गया था पेपर. सो आई वाज रीडिंग दैट. सो वहां पे एक केस स्टडी हुई थी वेयर इट वाज फाउंड दैट नाउ डेज देयर इज अ कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ ग्रूम प्राइस. ऐसा कुछ बहुत रॉकेट साइंस कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है, पढ़ने के बाद बहुत सिंपल है. Which is determined based on the market value. आप बोलोगे मैम इसमें पढ़ने की क्या जरूरत है, ये तो हम रोजमर्रे में देख लेते. वो बात सही है आपकी. You see it in your everyday life. The rate is a wrong, but price is equally wrong. The price of the groom is decided by which caste he belongs. What is the educational status? भाई IIT से पढ़ा लड़का है, ठीक है, IIM से पढ़ा हुआ लड़का है, अच्छा IAS है आपका लड़का, ठीक है. So what is the job? What is education? What are the job prospects? How secured life that guy is going to give to my daughter? So that determines the groom price. अब समझ आया? With all due respect, वो क्रिस्टोफर जेफरले की स्टडी, why Jats are demanding reservation under OBC status, the prospect of the groom in the marriage market, how secured is your job, how much income security you can provide. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? ठीक है. Then Sanskritization with respect to practice of dowry. आपने कहा कि जी हम तो डाउरी नहीं लेंगे, ठीक है. फिर आपने देखा शर्मा जी ने डाउरी ले ली. डोंट माइंड ये शर्मा जी वर्मा जी इसलिए क्योंकि बहुत इजीली मैं एग्जांपल दे पाती हूँ. तो शर्मा जी टुक द डाउरी एंड देन यू आर लाइक, देखो हम ही एक सत्य के, आई एम सॉरी फॉर द हिंदी, बट दिस इज हाउ सोसाइटी वर्क्स, दैट हम वी वर द फ्लैग बेरर ऑफ ऑनेस्टी, इंटीग्रिटी. सी शर्मा जी, आफ्टर टेकिंग डाउरी ही इज लीडिंग सच अ कंफर्टेबल लाइफ. Now he has a car also. He has such good house also to stay. And have you seen Mrs. Sharma? What kind of jewelry she is wearing? आज से पहले तो कभी नहीं थी Mrs. Sharma के पास. Now she has all kind of comfort. So then in your next son's marriage, you will be like, am I the only one who's responsible for establishing ethics and integrity in the society? Am I the only one who's going to bring about the change in the society? I am no Gandhi. I am no saint. I will also take dowry. Sanskritization of the practice of dowry so as to improve your status in the society. Is that very clear? Practice of caste endogamy, scarcity of grooms. You have to get your daughter. Remember, daughter की उस पे family पे ज़्यादा pressure होता है. A male of upper caste can marry a female of lower caste, but a female of upper caste cannot marry a male of lower caste. So the pressure is on the family of the female to look for a groom who belongs to the same caste or a caste higher than them, not the lower one. So practice of caste endogamy also creates scarcity of groom, which further increases the dowry. वही डिमांड एंड सप्लाई का खेल है यार. डिमांड ज्यादा है, सप्लाई कम है, प्राइस बढ़ जाते हैं. आपको भी लग रहा होगा आई एम कमोडिफाइंग, बट दिस इज हाउ इट वर्क्स. इज दिस क्लियर? नहीं, आई कांट टेल हिज नेम. अरे ये नेमिंग एंड शेमिंग नहीं हो जाएगी पब्लिकली. I have my ethics in place. ठीक है. So lack of proper implementation of existing laws. Obviously laws are existing, but they are not properly implemented. Despite increase in women education, problem of dowry still persists because increase in education has not resulted into corresponding increase in female labor force participation. अब ये नहीं पूछना how this. We have discussed it in so much of detail in last lecture that there has been an increase in education, but it has not resulted in corresponding increase in her female labor force participation. She is still economically dependent on her would-be husband or whatsoever. ठीक है. Then practice is associated with, somebody wrote, taking dowry and giving dowry is a matter of status symbol. अरे हमने अपनी लड़की की शादी में इतना लगाया और हमारे लड़के की शादी में हमें इतना मिला. That's a status symbol in today's time, right? So that is also one of the reason how it is associated with the social prestige of the family. Is this clear? क्या करें? What needs to be done? अच्छा, before we see what needs to be done, give me the answer. What needs to be done? Give me some good points. थोड़ा 2 मिनट सोचो. Let's make this interesting. Just think, क्या करें? What needs to be done to address this menace of dowry in our society? वो नाला, because individual ethics, individual morality. ओके, आई टेल यू वन इंटरेस्टिंग इंसिडेंट. डाउरी तो खैर चलो बाद की बात है, जब शादी होगी. एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग सी बात बताती हूँ. वो टॉपर स्टॉक वगैरह नहीं होती है, विदाउट नेमिंग, फिर मत पूछना अगली बार कि नाम क्या है. सो देयर वाज दिस इंटरेस्टिंग पर्सन हु केम फॉर टॉपर स्टॉक विजन में. सो हिज इंटरव्यू, मतलब वो टॉपर स्टॉक वगैरह नहीं होता जो यूट्यूब वगैरह पे आता है. सो देन ही केम, सो ही आस्क्ड अस कि मतलब विजन क्या देगा हमें. We feigned ignorance because we thought that as if we didn't hear. और ये इसी बार की बात है जो इस बार का रिजल्ट था, ठीक है. एंड ही आस्क्ड कि विजन क्या देगा. सो हमने ऐसे प्रिटेंड किया जैसे हमें तो समझ ही नहीं आया क्या पूछ रहा है, विद दैट इनोसेंट फेस. मतलब विजन क्या देगा. तो फिर हमारे हाथ में एक बुके था. वी वर लाइक दिस इज फॉर यू, यू नो टाइप्स. सो इज लाइक नहीं नहीं, आई एम नॉट आस्किंग अबाउट दिस. आई वेंट टू दिस इंस्टीट्यूट विदाउट नेमिंग, एंड डोंट आस्क मी द नेम. आई वेंट टू दिस इंस्टीट्यूट, दे गेव मी दिस. आई वेंट टू दिस इंस्टीट्यूट, दे गेव मी दिस. सो आई एम आस्किंग यू, व्हाट विल यू गिव. We pretended as if we didn't hear it. We were shocked. I was like, एथिक्स का पेपर दिया था ना. तो मुझे कभी कभी फील होता है कि ये एथिक्स वेथिक्स यूपीएससी फालतू में ही कर रही है, कुछ होना वाना है नहीं. सबको पता है 2-4 लाइनें सीख के चले जाओ, नंबर आ जाएंगे. बट आई वॉज सो शॉक्ड. आई वाज लाइक, फॉरगेट अबाउट एथिक्स पेपर. मतलब जुम्मा जुम्मा अभी तो तुम ऑफिसर बने नहीं हो, अभी ट्रेनिंग पे गए नहीं हो, हफ्ते भर पहले रिजल्ट आया है. एंड ये क्या मतलब सारी कोचिंग का खर्चा यहीं से निकाल के ले जाओगे क्या. मतलब मेरा कहने का मतलब था. एंड ही हैड अ प्राउड मोमेंट, यू नो, दिस ए इंस्टीट्यूट गेव मी दिस, दिस बी इंस्टीट्यूट गेव मी दिस, सो व्हाट आर यू ऑफरिंग. ही वाज लाइक, ये बुके है हमारे पास. आजकल बुके के भी पैसे बढ़ गए. पहले 150 रुपए में आता था, अब 350 में आता है. ये लेना है ले लो भाई, इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं है हमारे पास. सो द पॉइंट हियर इज कि उस वक्त समझ नहीं आया. तो डाउरी तो बहुत बाद की बात है. यहां तो मतलब रिजल्ट आते ही शुरू हो जाते हैं. आई जस्ट होप that but on the contrary, we have good candidates also. In fact, to be very honest, rank 1 I will mention, because this is something to be appreciated. He was so brutally honest, so कुछ ज्यादा ऑनेस्ट हो गया था, बट दैट वाज सच अ नाइस थिंग फॉर अ चेंज. समवन वाज नॉट मटीरियलिस्टिक एंड समवन वाज क्वाइट वोकल अबाउट हिज एक्सपीरियंसेस, वेदर गुड और बैड. सो व्हाट्सोएवर इट इज, ठीक है. सो बट देन आई एम जनरली सेइंग, ठीक. सो रैंक 1 आई कैन कोट बिकॉज इट इज अ गुड एग्जाम्पल. रेस्ट आई कांट नेम द पर्सन, बट जनरली सेइंग. इज दिस वेरी क्लियर? ठीक है, चलो जल्दी से अब देखते हैं क्या वे फॉरवर्ड हो सकता है. Aditya, nahin, father giving gifts to the daughter in marriage is definitely not considered as dowry. Absolutely not. But how it is being projected in the society. So I'll tell you, बहुत बार होता है ये confusion भी होता है कि अरे यार हम दे सकते हैं, हम दे रहे हैं, हमसे किसी ने मांगा नहीं है. The point here is आप दे सकते हो, right? So you are giving. But because of few who can give, who can afford, the pressure is created on many who can't. And as a result of it, there is a debt trap in which they get, engulfed, that they have to take money from money lenders. भाई गवर्नमेंट तो, वो बैंक तो जाके बोलोगे नहीं कि भैया लोन चाहिए, बेटी को दहेज देना है, ये तो बोलोगे नहीं. प्राइवेट मनी लेंडर्स से ही पैसे लोगे. फिर तो आपको पता है क्या डेट साइकिल होती है, घर गिरवी, सब कुछ, एसेट्स. सो दैट इज अ मेजर प्रॉब्लम, ठीक है ना. सो या, बट हाँ, फादर गिविंग गिफ्ट्स टू द डॉटर, एब्सोल्युटली दैट इज नॉट कंसिडर्ड एज अ डाउरी, ठीक है. प्रोवाइडेड किस तरह से दिया गया है. एग्जैक्टली आशीष, दिस इज द पॉइंट विच आई मेड. एब्सोल्युटली. Okay, love marriage. Who says love marriage you don't have to give dowry? When the love marriage is arranged, then also. But anyhow, we'll take the point. Street plays, absolutely correct. Yes. नहीं बच्चे, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है मैट्रिलिनियल कॉन्सेप्ट। देखो ये तो मैट्रिलिनियलिटी से यू विल ट्रेस योर लीनिएज फ्रॉम मदर्स साइड, तो वो वाली बात हो जाती है। ठीक है, और कुछ? बिल्कुल, absolutely educate your girl and make her strong and independent so that she doesn't have to depend on the groom or the groom's family. Value based education system, start socializing the children right from the beginning against this concept of dowry culture. नहीं विनीत, नहीं दिया हमने, सिर्फ बुके दिया, इसीलिए उसने ज्यादा अच्छा इंटरव्यू भी नहीं दिया हमको। Absolutely. Make dowry, the practice against dowry like a social movement, जैसे कि चाइल्ड लेबर। ठीक है, चाइल्ड लेबर के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कैलाश सत्यार्थी, ही हैज क्रिएटेड अ सोशल मूवमेंट अगेंस्ट दिस प्रैक्टिस ऑफ चाइल्ड लेबर। सिमिलरली इट्स अ टाइम दैट यू क्रिएट अ सोशल मूवमेंट अगेंस्ट दिस प्रैक्टिस ऑफ डाउरी। प्रमोट एथिकल वैल्यूज, सिनेमा, एब्सोल्युटली मेक यूज ऑफ इट। एब्सोल्युटली, राइट्स फॉर वुमेन, किसने बोला ये? श्रीचरण, परफेक्ट। बिल्कुल अनुष्का, stop treating the status of women with respect to their marital status. They have their individual existence. Ravi, Adarsh marriages, absolutely. Look at it. Promote the concept of Adarsh marriage. Affluent people should restrain from these lavish wedding. In fact, there was a practice, जब demonetization हुआ था, 2 IAS officers got married in just 500 rupees. See what an irony, 500 rupees में IAS बहुत coveted post है in our society. 2 IAS officers got married in just 500 rupees. So it is the affluent section, whether it is power affluent, economically affluent, educationally affluent. Thus, that section has to lay the example. So the concept of adarsh marriage, model marriage to be very precise. Then stigmatization of practice of dowry through naming, shaming, mohalla committee. You should not be proud of the fact that you have taken dowry or you've given dowry. You should be named and shamed. There has to be stigma associated with this practice of dowry. Then efforts should be made to increase female labor force participation. So as you guys have said, increase financial independence. ठीक है, रूरल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्रमोट करो, इन्वेस्टमेंट लाओ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में, ठीक है, सो दैट ओवरऑल फीमेल लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन शुड इंक्रीज। एक सर्वे हुआ था, IHDS सर्वे, विच सेड दैट if you invest in the construction of road which will improve the accessibility to the labor market, automatically there will be an increase in the female labor force participation. Is that very clear? ठीक है, then identify key leaders, personalities in the society and persuade them to lend their voice to the issue of dowry. Educate them with respect to ill effect of dowry. आज if I am telling you नहीं नहीं dowry मत लो, ये मत करो, आप कहोगे यार आप हो कौन, अपने काम से काम रखो, why should I listen to you? But in every village, in every community, right, or in every town whatsoever, in your caste or in your community, in your religion, in your village, ठीक है, हर जगह there would be some people who have already established their credibility. At least you look up to them, you listen to them. We should target those individuals who have considerable influence over others in the society, and we should educate them with respect to the ill effects of dowry so that it can have a snowballing effect. Snowballing matlab it will have a domino effect and they can further convince the other people in the community and society that we should raise our voice against this practice. So the strategic intervention has to happen. Then outlawing of extravagant weddings. बहुत हो गया यार, ये जो pomp and show वाली weddings होती हैं, जो सोशल मीडिया के बैकड्रॉप में और ज्यादा बड़ी हो गई हैं। मतलब the people they want all those lavish style wedding. Why? Just to post the video on their Insta or you know Facebook or WhatsApp or whatsoever it is. तो आजकल इस बार का टॉपिक है ना, that the self discovery has been outsourced to technology. सेल्फ डिस्कवरी, इनफैक्ट आई बी डिस्कसिंग, ऐसे का मेरा सेशन है, आई थिंक 10th को है, सो आई बी डिस्कसिंग दिस ईयर्स टॉपिक। तो सेल्फ डिस्कवरी has been outsourced to technology. Self-discovery as in what you want in life. So what you want in life has also been outsourced to technology. Now social media is telling you that what you want in life, whether I want a lavish wedding or not, whether I want this particular designer's lehenga or not, whether I want this kind of pre-wedding photo shoot, uske liye bhi hum bahar jaake photo shoot karayenge. कहां से ये सारे आइडियाज आ रहे हैं, कहां से इतना प्रेशर क्रिएट हो रहा है? एंड पेरेंट्स बेचारे दे हैव नो अदर ऑप्शन बट, क्योंकि एक बार शादी हो रही है, चलो फुलफिल देयर नीड्स. Are you getting what I'm trying? आज का youth, instead of investing money for their future, security or something, they are spending money like anything on their wedding. Why? Because what they want from their life has been outsourced to technology. Now, social media, your Insta profile is going to tell you and is going to establish your credibility in the society. Such an irony. Is that very clear? Ensure girl child gets share in the ancestral property. Is this very clear for everyone? You can add more points to it. Clear है? बिल्कुल. Give freedom to the girl to say no. Make marriage a will, not a compulsion. Your status should not be determined by marriage. Imagine, Kajal. See, this is what I was trying. Absolutely. You should not, to be very honest, I never expect that change should happen in the society. I expect that whatever I want to preach, let me first practice it. If I'm able to practice, then I'm more confident while preaching. ठीक है? So बस वही आपको करना है. Start from your family level. ठीक है? Is this clear? बस एक लास्ट टॉपिक लेते हैं. आज कुछ ज्यादा ही चर्चा हो गई. Harassment of women at workplace, sexual harassment at workplace. But by the way, ऐसा नहीं है कि dowry provisions are not misused. There was a very infamous case, Nisha Sharma case of 2003, and she had blamed the family of the groom that they have asked for the dowry. Google कर लेना, Nisha Sharma case 2003. In fact, after that incident, she was made a hero. That she is the one who has raised 2003 की बात है यार, आज से कितने साल पहले. So she was made the hero. In fact, her incident was incorporated in your books also, school books. So and that family, the groom's family, was literally named, shamed, everything. And after like approximately 10 years, in 2012, they were finally acquitted, and it was proven that the girl had put false claims or the false charges on the boy's family. Why? Because she didn't want to marry that guy. She was in love with someone else. But anyhow, the point which I'm saying, but that does not mean that the reality doesn't change. Reality is still women are victims of dowry practice. However, there are a handful of women who misuse the provisions. Is that clear? So now next topic and the last topic. There are two things which I'm not discussing. That is, one is surrogacy. I'll discuss December ki social issue ki class mein, and there is that marriageable age wala issue that I'll discuss there. Okay. So recently Supreme Court has held that the objective of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act is protection, prevention and redressal of complaints. Why do I have a tendency to write it like this? Because many a time, suppose the question came, this becomes the introduction. Okay. So Supreme Court has held that the objective of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act is protection of women, prevention of sexual harassment and redressal of complaint. Under the Act, it clearly defines what constitutes sexual harassment. There are two things. One is quid pro quo and second is hostile work environment. Is that very clear? ठीक है. Quid pro quo. Quid pro quo मतलब I am telling you that if you want a promotion, you have to provide me sexual favor. Quid pro quo. Right? I'm telling you that if you want this job, you have to satisfy my sexual desire. Quid pro quo. So even if the woman agrees to these conditions and later she files the case, it is absolutely justified under sexual harassment because you have forced her to provide you sexual favor in return of a job or a promotion or a salary hike. Is that very clear? You have taken advantage of her vulnerable situation. Quid pro quo, exchange of sexual favor as against any other favor. Or hostile work environment. Both would be considered as sexual harassment. Section 354A of IPC clearly defines what constitutes sexual harassment. Any kind of physical contact, request for sexual favor, showing pornography, physical, verbal, non-verbal conduct of sexual nature, and sexually colored remarks. जो ये ऑफिस में कल्चर होता है ना, हाय हनी, स्वीटी, डार्लिंग, भैया अगली बंदी का नाम है, नाम ले लो, क्योंकि सेक्सुअली कलर्ड रिमार्क्स में यू कैन बी द चार्जेस ऑफ सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट कैन बी put on the other person. So sexually colored remarks are also not allowed. It clearly defines what constitutes an aggrieved woman. A woman, irrespective of her age and work status, whether she is a client or a customer, whether she is a domestic helper, all of them are incorporated. Just one notion, it is not a gender neutral act. Only women has the right to claim relief under sexual harassment. Men do not. Is that very clear? Okay. Sexual Harassment Act is applicable to both formal and informal sector. ठीक है. Complaint to be filed within 90 days. There is a time bound filing of the complaint. Just one disclaimer, जब child issue पढ़ाऊंगी तब देखेंगे कि पॉक्सो में when you file the complaint, there is no time limit. Whenever the child is comfortable, he can report the incident. It is not that within 1 year, 2 year, 3 year or a month, ऐसा कुछ नहीं. But with respect to sexual harassment, you have to file the complaint within 90 days. That is 3 months from the incidence of last sexual harassment. One thing. Second thing is, let us say due to some very urgent or desperate factor that you could not file the complaint, then you have to give in writing the reason, and then it will be at the discretion of internal complaint committee within that organization whether to look into your complaint or not. Is that very clear? So the complaint has to be filed within 90 days. Once the complaint is filed, the inquiry has to be completed within another 90 days. And once ICC has submitted the report, it is mandatory for the employer to take the action within 60 days of the submission of the report. What is ICC? For a formal sector, you have to constitute ICC. For informal sector, there is local complaint committee. ICC stands for Internal Complaint Committee. LCC, which is established for informal sector, stands for Local Complaint Committee. ICC requires employer to create ICC. It says, this act clearly says, ICC has a power of civil court. The presiding officer will be a woman at a senior level. There have to be members, at least 2 from the legal field or women cause, and 1 has to be from an NGO which is dedicated to a women cause. ये सब prelims के लिए important है. मैंने आपको बस content एक जगह इकट्ठा करके दे दिया है. ये आप खुद भी देख सकते हो. At least 50% of the members have to be women. On the other hand, local committee is established in each district by the district officer or the collector. Additional local complaint committee at the block level. चेयरपर्सन women from the eminent field, 1 member तालुक ब्लॉक या वार्ड का, 2 members NGO के जिसमें एटलीस्ट 1 women, 1 SC, ST, OBC माइनॉरिटी और 1 लीगल, 1 एक्स ऑफिशियो मेंबर होता है फ्रॉम द फील्ड ऑफ सोशल वेलफेयर. इज दैट क्लियर? Then there is a provision for false complaint. नहीं अंशुल, प्रिया रमानी ने मी टू किया था सोशल मीडिया पे. ही टोल्ड द वर्ल्ड दैट शी वाज बीइंग हैरेस्ड. ठीक है, दैट इज मी टू. So as a result, the person against whom Priya Ramani had filed the case has filed the counter case, that the charge of defamation. So uska judgment aaya tha that it is not treated as a defamation. If in public good a person has spoken the truth, I'll tell you the exact thing. The exact thing was Priya Ramani case, court upheld that if the truth is spoken in public good is a defense against the claim of defamation. Court recognized it as valid and legitimate women's right to speak against injustice even decades later. तो क्योंकि उन्होंने मी टू किया था, तो इसलिए the person against whom the charges were imposed, the person has filed the defamation. So उस defamation case में the court gave the judgment that women can speak the truth even after decades and it would not be treated as a case of defamation. Is that clear? ठीक है. हाँ हाँ पूजा, बस अभी तो मुझे 5 मिनट और दो, मैं बस करवाती हूँ इसे, तुरंत अपलोड कराती हूँ. Offense is bailable and non-cognizable. There is an online platform in order to encourage the reporting of the cases, that is She-Box. Sexual Harassment E-Box. Is that very clear for everyone? Is it making sense? ठीक है, एक दो चीजें लिखो फिर हम क्लास कंक्लूड करते हैं. Write down. Sexual harassment. Sexual harassment. Give the heading sexual harassment. Victimization of women at workplace, victimization of women at workplace, along with patriarchal mindset, victimization of women at workplace, along with patriarchal mindset, has led to decline in female labor force participation, has led to decline in female labor force participation. Next, according to a report of FICCI, FICCI, according to the report of FICCI, 36% of Indian companies, 36% of Indian companies and 25% of MNCs have yet not established ICC. 36% of Indian companies and 25% of MNCs have yet not established ICC. Next, around 70% of the women, हाँ समीम इसी में है पीडीएफ, इसी वाली पीपीटी में है पीडीएफ पिछली क्लास का भी. ठीक है, मैंने एक जगह कंसोलिडेट कर दिया है. सो दिस ऑल्सो हैज, वेट लेट मी जस्ट चेक. हाँ है इसमें, पिछली पूरी क्लास का पीपीटी है इसमें. मैं ये एक अपलोड करा दूंगी आपके लिए. नेक्स्ट क्या था? Around 70% of the women do not report the cases due to, first, lack of awareness about sexual harassment, lack of awareness or understanding. Many a times the women do not even understand the fact that they have been sexually harassed. So lack of understanding about sexual harassment. Fear of retaliation. Fear of retaliation. Fear of retaliation. Lack of faith in complaint mechanism. Lack of faith in complaint mechanism. Problem of social exclusion या fear of social exclusion कि social boycott हो जाएगा. So social boycott or social exclusion. In fact, there is a very high profile case, रूपम देओल बजाज केस. कभी फुर्सत मिले तो गूगल करके, जब पढ़ने वढ़ने का मन नहीं करे तो देखना, रूपम देओल बजाज केस in context of Punjab. The case was filed against KPS Gill, who was the hero of the insurgency which happened, or the extremist खालिस्तानी मूवमेंट विच हैपेंड इन पंजाब. सो 1988 का केस है. उसी के पहले ऑपरेशन ब्लू स्टार, ऑपरेशन ब्लैक थंडर हैज हैपेंड एंड केपीएस गिल वाज द हीरो फिगर ऑफ ऑपरेशन ब्लू स्टार. ठीक है, सो एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ इट 1988 में हाई प्रोफाइल केस हुआ था. सो केपीएस गिल वाज अ वेरी सुपर कॉप काइंड ऑफ अ पर्सन. और पंजाब में आईपीएस ऑफिसर्स ऑलवेज हैड अ बेटर और हायर स्टेचर एज कंपेयर टू द आईएएस ऑफिसर. सो रूपम देओल बजाज एंड हर हस्बैंड both were high profile IAS officers. So once they happened to attend a party where KPS Gill had, he was under this influence of alcohol or whatsoever it is, and he didn't know his limitations. He went up to Rupam Deol Bajaj and he asked her, he called her out that, come with me. And when she said that you are crossing your limit, so then he hit her on her posterior. So that what happened, right? So everyone in the society was ki बस इतना ही, एंड फॉर दैट यू हैव फाइल्ड द कंप्लेंट. द सेम इंसिडेंट ऑफ थप्पड़ मूवी की एक चाटा ही तो मारा था, तो वैसे ही केपीएस गिल हैज जस्ट हिट ऑन योर पोस्टीरियर. सो दिस इज a very trivial matter. How can you even file the complaint? But Rupam Dale Bajaj, she took a stand for herself and she said, I would not bear this, and she filed the complaint. You know what High Court said? High Court said that this case is so trivial that it is not even worthy of prosecution. That were the wordings of High Court in this case, that this incident of hitting a woman on her posterior is such a trivial issue that it is not worthy of prosecution. Imagine the dignity of the women treated as unworthy or trivial. However, she challenged the judgment in Supreme Court, and finally Supreme Court gave the judgment in her favor that this amounts for the offense under different sections of IPC. It was treated that you have tried to outrage the modesty of the women. Is that very clear? However, 1989 में तो केपीएस गिल को पद्मश्री वगैरह भी दिया गया था, एंड वो सब अलग बात है. लेकिन रूपम देल बजाज, when she discusses or she talks about her plight, so she says no matter how powerful, IAS से तो ज्यादा पावरफुल नहीं हो सकते ना, तो IAS ऑफिसर है, educated women है, despite she was being subjected to sexual harassment. And the irony was the world, the society was telling her that it is such a trivial matter. Why are you trying to defame such a super cop in the society? So this is how society discourages you to file the complaint. Is that very clear? ये तो खुद IAS officer थी, और she had that zeal. एक कॉमन विमेन के लिए बाहर जाके काम करना अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी होती है, तो उनको ऐसा लगता है दैट इफ दे आर गोइंग टू बी वोकल अबाउट सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट, पहली बात घर वाले घर पे बिठा लेंगे, ऑफिस वाले काम से आई एम सॉरी फॉर द हिंदी, वो इमोशंस आ जाते हैं ना, सो आई रिजॉर्ट टू माय मदर टंग. सो द पॉइंट हियर इज दैट anyway the labor market opportunities for women are very rare, so they believe that if they are going to file or they will be vocal about these acts of sexual harassment, one, the family would not allow because it's a stigma, okay, it's a black spot on their prestige, they would not allow you to work. Secondly, you might be asked to, or you might be removed from your job. So in every which way it is a lose-lose situation for women. So the conducive ecosystem is not created. Despite the law in place, a conducive ecosystem is missing where women feels confident to report about these incidences. Is that very clear for everyone? ठीक है? Is this okay for everyone? एक last चीज है. Before we conclude the lecture, there's one thing with this women issue would come to an end. So we have talked about sexual harassment. We have talked about all these incidences. Okay. But there is a term which is used. New legal terrorism. This is with respect to, and this term is used by Supreme Court. In not one, but in many cases. Misuse of laws by women. Specifically, Domestic Violence Act and Section 498A of IPC. This is with respect to cruelty by husband and relatives. So Supreme Court has observed that these laws, instead of being used as a shield, it is used as a weapon to settle their personal scores. We are not generalizing, but this is the observation of Supreme Court that in some of the cases, specifically with respect to domestic violence and Section 498A of IPC, which is referred to as cruelty by husband or relatives, the women are misusing the laws. So rather than being used as a shield, it is being used as a weapon to settle their personal scores, right? So I wanted to give you a question. Once you've written this, please let me know. I am just reading Shantanu's message. Honestly, sharing in my department. हाँ. हम्म. हाँ वो कह सकते हैं, बट एक्चुअली ये जो न्यू लीगल टेररिज्म यूज हुआ ना, वो यहाँ ऐसे स्पेसिफिकली यूज किया था, इसलिए मैंने ये मेंशन किया. ओके. Hmm. My time, Shantanu, in fact, when I was in Delhi University, in my department also, one of the senior professor was suspended. Obviously, he was not being released from his job because he was a permanent faculty and everything. So the one of my senior, and there were a group of girls who complained against him that how during their PhD thesis and everything, he asked for quid pro quo and everything. So then he was just temporarily suspended because वो नहीं होता है कि गरम issue होता है. So the students were protesting and everybody was demanding that he should be removed and action should be taken against him, but वो एक temporary suspension था. And in your case, which is a good thing कि at least they have taken the action, but हमारे case में ऐसा नहीं हुआ. एक temporary suspension आया और बाद में देखा that person has resumed the job. So that was the reality. But good that in your case it happened. So yeah, it's nothing new. It is a very common practice which happens, and especially जो research के students होते हैं जिनकी PhD वगैरह stake पे होती है. I've seen a lot of my seniors struggling, a lot of my friends also struggling. It's high time that needs to undergo a change. एक question देना चाहती थी मैं. Write down. Increase. नहीं, wait. Don't write. Let me just. हाँ, right. On one hand, increase violence against women justifies strong laws, whereas on the other hand, these laws are misused. Explain the paradox in context of Indian society. I'm not interested in the first part because that we have already discussed. I'm more interested what you write in the second part. Why these laws are misused. Vodnala, I'll discuss the strategy tomorrow. ठीक है, आज मैं थक गई, आज बहुत बोला है मैंने लगता है. Today I'm feeling slightly tired. I think it's not because I have spoken a lot. I think there was a lot of emotional investment in the points. Why? I'm feeling slightly tired. So we'll discuss tomorrow. ठीक है? So yeah. So I'm not interested in the first part of the question. I'm more interested that why these laws are misused. Can you give me some points and we can just conclude the lecture? Why women are misusing the laws? This would be the assignment question for the day. Who we have as the coordinator? Anurag. Anurag, this would be the assignment question. बिल्कुल ठीक है स्निग्धा. Naming and shaming, absolutely. And trial by media is the worst thing which can happen. Even before the judgment, you already have an opinion that the falana person is a culprit. That is one of the major challenge. On one hand, increased violence against women justifies strong laws, whereas on the other hand, these laws are misused. Why these laws are misused? Why women is misusing domestic violence? Why women is misusing section 498A? Why? How they are able to misuse it and why they are misusing it? Let me see what points we have. Personal issues are perfect. For settling, okay, ठीक है. Revenge vendetta. Ravi, lack of gender neutral laws, personal vendetta, naming and shaming, ambiguity in the, absolutely, yes. The loopholes, ambiguity with respect to the wording of the laws कह सकते हैं, ठीक है. So lack of Gender neutral laws. Gender stereotypes, where we always perceive women as abla, women as victim. If you are walking on the road and you see a girl slapping a man, what would be your first opinion? Hands on your heart. You see girl is slapping a boy. What is the first thing that comes to your mind? Pakka ladke ne kuch kiya hai? Hands on your heart. What would be your first opinion when you see a girl slapping a guy? That's the problem. Gender stereotype, where we believe women is always a victim. हाँ, लखनऊ इंसिडेंट है ना, कैब वाला था ना. अरे यार, ठीक है. मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली जो मैरिटल लॉज हम मिसयूज करते हैं, दैट्स मोर बिकॉज डिक्लाइन in religious significance of marriage. No longer it is considered as sacred by those who are misusing these laws. ऐसा नहीं है कि सबके लिए है. At least those who are misusing the laws are the one for whom no longer it is considered sacred. They don't mind getting divorced or separated. Divorce, separation, for them is not a taboo. Is that clear? इसने बोला दिव्यांश. ओके, ठीक है. थर्ड पॉइंट में, अरे रिवेंज वेंडेटा. ओके, सही है. हाँ, जसलीन कौर केस. राइट 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 राइट. ये भी ट्रैफिक सिग्नल वाला जो केस था, जिसको सोशल मीडिया पे इतना वायरल कर दिया था. दैट पर्सन हैड सफर्ड सो मच. या एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. ठीक है. So did you get the point? So with this, you can absolutely add more points to it. So with this, we will conclude the lecture. काफी time हो गया, ठीक है. So tomorrow we are meeting, and tomorrow I'm starting with a fresh topic, that is diversity. ठीक है. So this is the assignment question. Write the complete answer. ठीक है. Write the complete answer, not just, this is just second part of the answer. So write a complete answer. एंड कंक्लूजन में एक आध वे फॉरवर्ड दे देना. नीड ऑफ जेंडर न्यूट्रल लॉज. ठीक है. जेंडर इक्वालिटी हैज टू बी एस्टैब्लिश. जेंडर स्टीरियोटाइपिंग इज अ चैलेंज बोथ फॉर मेन एंड विमेन. ठीक है. सो जेंडर न्यूट्रल सोशलाइजेशन विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू जेंडर न्यूट्रल वैल्यूज इज द नीड ऑफ द आवर. ठीक है, laws should be more clearly specified and worded to avoid any kind of ambiguity. So कुछ भी 2-4 points लिख के conclude कर देना. This is the assignment question. Please submit. ठीक है, and try answering those essay topics whenever you get time for that. ठीक है, so tomorrow I'm starting with a fresh topic, that is diversity. I'll be teaching tomorrow linguistic diversity and communalism. That would be the agenda for tomorrow. ठीक है, take care people. Good night. And just give me 15 minutes. I am sending this document to Anurag. I'll send it to the team and just make sure it is uploaded. Okay? Okay. Bye people. Good night.